You found the Stealth Podcast. Tonight, we'll travel through dark and lonely stories. Where in the world are you watching from? What time is it there? Subscribe and leave your like to support us. Let's begin. My name is Garrett Winters. I'm 32 years old, and I've been living in Portland for most of my adult life. That was until 6 months ago when I quit my soul-crushing IT job, sold almost everything I owned, and converted an old Ford Transit into my new home. The freedom of the open road called to me like nothing else ever had. No more rent, no more office politics, just me and my laptop doing freelance work wherever I could find decent Wi-Fi. I'd been making my way across the country, documenting my journey on social media like thousands of other Vanlifers. The algorithm seemed to favor the picturesque spots, sunsets over mountain ranges, morning coffee by crystal clear lakes. What nobody shows you are the nights when you're parked somewhere less idyllic, listening to every creak and groan of your vehicle, wondering if that sound was just the metal contracting in the cold or something else entirely. That's how I found myself in Pennsylvania in late October. The fall colors were spectacular, and I'd spent the last few days exploring the Pocono Mountains. The weather had turned suddenly, bringing an unseasonable cold snap that made me reconsider my plans to head further north. I needed to find somewhere to hunker down for a few days until the freezing temperatures passed. I'd connected with another Vanlifer online, Mara Keating, who recommended a spot near an abandoned quarry outside of Centralia. It's remote, but that's the point, she'd messaged. No one bothers you there. Some locals know about it, but they keep to themselves. Mara had been living on the road for 3 years, and her advice had been solid so far. I trusted her judgment. The drive to Centralia was eerie. I'd read about the place, a near-ghost town sitting atop an underground mine fire that had been burning since 1962. Most residents had been relocated decades ago, leaving behind a handful of stubborn holdouts and a network of abandoned roads buckling from the heat below. The main streets were mostly empty as I passed through, just a few scattered houses with smoke rising from their chimneys. Following Mara's directions, I turned onto a narrow gravel road that wound through dense woods about 2 miles outside of town. The trees formed a canopy overhead, their leaves a mixture of brilliant orange and blood red. My van bounced along the uneven surface, the supplies in my cabinets rattling noisily. After about a mile, the road opened to a clearing beside the old quarry, just as Mara had described. The quarry itself was massive, a giant pit carved into the earth with steep stone walls dropping to a pool of dark water below. I parked in a flat area about 50 yards from the edge, positioning my van so I could see the sunset through my side windows. The isolation felt perfect. I stepped outside, breathing in the crisp autumn air, and felt that familiar satisfaction of discovering a place that seemed like it was all mine, if only temporarily. As dusk settled in, I noticed another vehicle parked at the far end of the clearing, an old blue Chevy van with faded paint and curtained windows. I hadn't spotted it at first, partially hidden by a stand of pine trees. That must be Mara, I thought. She'd mentioned she might be in the area. I considered walking over to introduce myself, but decided against it. One of the unspoken rules of van life is respecting other people's space. If she wanted company, she'd come over. I made a simple dinner of pasta on my propane stove, scrolled through social media for a while using my phone's hotspot, and then settled in with a book as darkness fell completely. The night was exceptionally quiet. No distant traffic noise, no voices, just the occasional rustle of leaves as the wind picked up. I felt that comforting sense of solitude that had drawn me to this lifestyle in the first place, unaware that by morning, I would be desperately wishing I wasn't so completely alone. I woke to a light tapping on my window around 3 a.m. At first, I thought it was just branches swaying in the wind, but when I pulled back my blackout curtain, I saw a face, pale, female, with wide, frightened eyes. I nearly jumped out of my skin before recognizing Mara from her profile photos. She was mouthing something I couldn't make out, gesturing frantically for me to open the door. "Jesus, you scared the hell out of me," I said, sliding open the side door. Mara quickly climbed in, her movements jittery and rushed. In the dim light of my battery-powered lantern, I could see she was disheveled, her dark hair tangled, dirt smudged across her cheek, and her breathing ragged as if she'd been running. "Lock it," she whispered urgently. Lock the doors. Her voice trembled, and I noticed she was clutching a small hunting knife in her right hand. Something was seriously wrong. I'd dealt with sketchy situations before. It's an unavoidable part of life on the road. But the raw terror in Mara's eyes sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature outside. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice low as I secured the door. Mara moved toward the front of the van, peering through the windshield into the darkness beyond. She was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, both dirty and torn at the knee. Her knuckles were scraped raw. "There are people in the woods," she whispered. "I think they've been watching me for the last 2 nights. Tonight, they tried to break into my van." She spoke rapidly, her words tumbling out. I managed to slip out the back when they were working on the driver's side door. "I've been hiding in the trees for the last hour, watching them ransack my home." I reached for my phone to call 911, but Mara grabbed my wrist. "No signal out here," she said, her grip surprisingly strong. "I already tried, and we can't drive out. They've blocked the road with a fallen tree." "It wasn't there when you arrived, was it?" I shook my head, a knot forming in my stomach. The only way in or out was that single gravel road. Against my better judgment, I turned off the lantern and crawled to the front seats to look through the windshield. In the distance, I could make out movement around Mara's van, flashlight beams dancing in the darkness. There were at least 3 separate lights that I could count. I strained to hear voices, but caught only the occasional indistinct murmur carried on the wind. "We need to get out of here," I whispered, my mouth suddenly dry. "Maybe we can hike out through the woods, find the main road." Even as I said it, I knew it was a bad idea. The forest was dense, navigating it in the dark would be nearly impossible, and we'd make easy targets blundering through the underbrush. Mara shook her head. "They know these woods better than we do. I heard them talking earlier. They're locals, and they've done this before." She looked at me with a severity that made my blood run cold. "They're not just thieves, Garrett. I saw pictures in one of their hands. Pictures of other travelers. And a collection of trophies." I felt sick. This remote spot suddenly seemed like the worst possible place to be. We were trapped, with unknown threats circling closer, and no way to call for help. I made a decision. "We'll wait until first light," I whispered. "They may give up by then. If not, we have a better chance in daylight. My van's pretty well insulated. They won't hear us if we keep quiet." What I didn't say was that I wasn't sure I entirely trusted Mara either. She'd led me to this isolated spot, and her story, while terrifying, had holes. Why hadn't she mentioned these dangerous locals before? But looking at her genuine fear, I pushed my suspicions aside. We had to work together now. As we huddled in the darkness of my van, I caught a glimpse of something moving just beyond the tree-line. A figure, too tall and thin to be natural, watching us from the edge of the woods. When I blinked and looked again, it was gone. My mind was playing tricks on me, I told myself. But deep down, I knew the night was far from over, and the real horror was just beginning. Dawn broke with an unnatural stillness. No birdsong, no rustling of animals in the underbrush, just a heavy silence that pressed against my eardrums. Mara and I had barely slept, taking turns to keep watch. We'd spent the hours whispering back and forth, piecing together what little we knew. According to Mara, the locals called themselves the Collectors. They targeted travelers passing through, especially those who wouldn't be missed immediately. "We should check if they're still out there," I said, peering through a gap in my curtains. The morning fog hung thick over the quarry, obscuring much of the clearing. Mara's van was visible as a hazy blue shape in the distance, its doors hanging open like a gutted animal. I couldn't see any movement around it. "I'll go," Mara offered, her voice steadier than it had been hours earlier. "If the road's clear, we need to get out of here immediately." Before I could protest, she'd slipped out the side door, knife in hand, and disappeared into the mist. I watched her figure grow fainter until she was swallowed by the fog completely. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Anxiety gnawed at my insides. Something wasn't right. I tried starting my engine, relieved when it rumbled to life. If necessary, I could try to ram through whatever blockade they'd created on the road. As I sat in the driver's seat, rehearsing escape routes in my mind, my eyes fell on something I hadn't noticed before, a small leather-bound notebook wedged between the passenger seat and the center console. It wasn't mine. With shaking hands, I opened it to find a handwritten list of names, dates, and locations. The most recent entry turned my blood to ice. G. Winters, Portland, October 26th, Centralia Quarry. My name, my hometown, yesterday's date, this location. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The handwriting matched the note I'd received from Mara suggesting this spot. A sudden knock on my window made me jump so violently I hit my head on the roof. It was Mara, her face bloodied, gesturing frantically for me to open up. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. She practically fell inside, slamming it shut behind her. "They're coming," she gasped. "They were waiting in the woods. I only just got away." There was a deep gash across her forehead, blood streaming down her face. She noticed me holding the notebook and froze. Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of calculation replacing the fear. "Where did you find that?" she asked, her voice suddenly flat. "It was here in my van," I replied, heart hammering against my ribs. "Did you put it here, Mara? Is this your handwriting?" I held it up, showing her the page with my name. "Am I just another entry to you? Another target?" Her face contorted, transforming from panicked victim to something altogether more sinister. "You don't understand," she said, inching closer. "It's not what you think. The collectors, they're real. But I need to give them something, or they'll take me instead." She lunged for the notebook, but I jerked backward, hitting the horn accidentally. The loud blare echoed across the quarry. In that moment of distraction, Mara pulled the knife from her pocket. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and I believed she actually meant it. "But it's you or me, and I've survived out here too long to die now." She slashed forward, the blade catching my forearm as I raised it defensively. The pain was immediate and fierce. As we struggled in the confined space, a new sound cut through the chaos. Voices, calling to each other, growing closer. Through the windows, I could make out shapes moving through the fog toward us. Mara heard them too and hesitated just long enough for me to shove her backward. She stumbled against the side door, which swung open from her weight. "They're here," she hissed, a strange mixture of fear and resignation in her voice. She cast one last look at me, clutching her knife with white knuckles. "Run while you can. They won't follow you if they have me." Then she was gone, disappearing into the mist toward the quarry edge. Clutching my bleeding arm, I knew I had seconds to decide: stay in the relative safety of my van and risk being trapped, or make a break for it through the woods. The voices were getting closer, accompanied by the metallic click of what could only be guns being readied. With no time left to think, I grabbed my keys and phone, slid into the driver's seat, and slammed the accelerator to the floor. The van lurched forward into the fog, wheels spinning against the loose gravel. Through my rearview mirror, I caught glimpses of figures emerging from the tree line, at least 5 of them, dressed in dark clothing, faces obscured by what looked like crude leather masks. One raised something to his shoulder, a rifle. I swerved just as the back window exploded inward, showering me with glass. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat as I careened down the gravel path toward where I remembered the exit to be. The fog made navigation nearly impossible. Objects materialized just seconds before I'd have crashed into them. I sideswiped a large boulder, the impact sending a jarring shudder through the entire vehicle. The side mirror tore off with a metallic screech. Up ahead, I could finally make out the fallen tree Mara had mentioned. It wasn't just a tree. It was an entire barricade, constructed from logs and branches, reinforced with what looked like parts of old machinery. There was no way to drive around it on the narrow road, and my van didn't have the power to ram through. I slammed on the brakes about 50 yards from the blockade, mind racing. Behind me, I could hear engines starting up. They had vehicles too. I was trapped between the barricade ahead and the pursuers behind. In desperation, I swerved off the path and into the trees, the undercarriage scraping horribly against rocks and roots as I fought to control the wheel. Branches slapped against the windshield as I forced the van deeper into the forest. I had no plan beyond putting distance between myself and the collectors. The trees grew denser, forcing me to slow down. The sound of pursuit seemed to fade slightly, but I couldn't tell if they'd given up or were just taking a different route to cut me off. Suddenly, the ground dropped away beneath my right tires. The van tilted sickeningly as I realized I'd driven onto some kind of ridge or embankment. I tried to compensate, jerking the wheel left, but it was too late. The momentum carried me over. The world spun as the van rolled once, twice, before coming to rest on its side against a massive oak tree. The silence after the crash was disorienting. My head throbbed where it had struck the side window, and something warm trickled down my face. My arm, already slashed by Mara's knife, screamed with fresh pain. I hung awkwardly in my seatbelt, the van now lying on its passenger side. Through the cracked windshield, I could see nothing but dense forest and swirling fog. I needed to move. Fumbling with the seatbelt release, I managed to free myself, dropping awkwardly onto the passenger door below. My phone had been flung somewhere during the crash. I couldn't find it in the jumbled mess of my possessions now strewn throughout the cabin. Without GPS, without a weapon, without any real knowledge of the area, my chances were diminishing by the second. I forced the driver's side door open, now above me, and pulled myself out, every movement sending spikes of pain through my injured arm. Perched on top of my sideways van, I tried to get my bearings. The fog was beginning to lift slightly, revealing more of the surrounding forest. In the distance, I could make out what looked like a service road or trail cutting through the trees. It was my only chance. As I prepared to climb down, a piercing scream echoed through the forest. Unmistakably Mara's voice, filled with such primal terror that my skin prickled with goose flesh. It came from the direction of the quarry, followed by another scream that cut off abruptly. Whatever fate she had planned for me had found her instead. I dropped to the ground, wincing as my ankle twisted slightly on impact. From somewhere to my left came the sound of men calling to each other, coordinating their search. They were closing in. I took off toward the service road I'd spotted, moving as quietly as possible through the underbrush. Each step was agony, but fear propelled me forward. The road, when I reached it, was little more than a dirt track, overgrown and clearly long abandoned. But it had to lead somewhere. I followed it downhill, reasoning that it would eventually connect to a main road or at least take me away from the quarry. Behind me, I heard a shout. Someone had found my crashed van. They would know I couldn't have gone far. I pushed myself harder, breaking into a run despite the pain. The track curved around a hillside, and as I rounded the bend, I saw salvation, an old maintenance shed, partially collapsed but still offering potential shelter. I ducked inside, pressing myself against the far wall behind a rusted piece of machinery. The interior was dark and smelled of decay and something else, something metallic and sickeningly familiar. Blood. As my eyes adjusted to the dimness, horror rose in my throat. The walls were covered with photographs, hundreds of them, showing people in various states of terror and suffering. Scattered below them on crude shelves were personal effects, watches, jewelry, wallets, phones, and hanging from hooks on the far wall, items I couldn't bring myself to look at directly, things that had once been parts of human bodies. I had stumbled into the collector's workshop, and from the sound of approaching voices, they were coming to resume their work. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows as footsteps approached the shed. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The rusty machinery concealed me from immediate view, but a proper search would find me in seconds. My mind raced, cataloging the limited options for weapons. A broken pipe near my foot, various rusted tools hanging on the wall just out of reach. The door creaked open, sending a shaft of morning light cutting through the dusty air. A silhouette filled the doorway, broad-shouldered, head oddly misshapen until I realized he was wearing one of those leather masks. He stepped inside, followed by a second, smaller figure. Neither spoke as they moved with practiced efficiency, checking behind the door and along the nearest wall. "He can't have gone far," the larger one finally said, his voice surprisingly cultured. Not with that injury Mara gave him. The mention of her name confirmed what I'd already suspected. She had been working with them all along, perhaps as bait or a scout. Had she truly tried to warn me at the end, or was that just another act? "Check the back," the smaller one grunted. They were getting closer to my hiding spot. I gripped the pipe, knowing I'd have one chance, one desperate swing before they overwhelmed me. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain they could hear it. Just as the larger man was about to round the machinery that concealed me, a radio crackled to life on his belt. "We found something at the quarry," a distant voice reported. "Looks like our girl tried to double-cross us. She was packing bags when we caught her." The larger man swore, reaching for the radio. "And the outsider?" "No sign yet, but his van's totaled. He's on foot." They conferred briefly before the smaller man said, "The quarry first. If she was planning to run, she might have stashed something valuable. We can sweep the shed again after. Relief flooded through me as they retreated, pulling the door shut behind them. The reprieve was temporary. They would be back, but it gave me precious minutes to think. I crawled from my hiding place, careful not to disturb anything that might indicate my presence. The photographs on the wall seemed to watch me accusingly as I searched for anything that might help me escape. In the back corner, partially hidden under a tarp, I found an old CB radio. It was dusty but intact, possibly still functional. I flipped switches frantically, praying for power. A red light blinked on, and static hissed from the speaker. I grabbed the handset, switching through channels, calling for help on each one. Nothing but static answered me. As I was about to give up, Channel 9 crackled with a response, faint but unmistakably human. "This is Park Ranger Station Echo. Identify yourself." The voice was female, professional, slightly confused. "Please help," I whispered urgently, afraid to speak too loudly. "I'm near Centralia Quarry. People are trying to kill me. They call themselves the Collectors." The radio went dead, cut off mid-sentence. I spun around to find the smaller masked man standing in the doorway again, wire cutters in his hand. He must have doubled back, perhaps suspicious or simply cautious. There was no cultured voice this time, no words at all, just a guttural sound of rage as he launched himself at me. I swung the pipe instinctively, connecting with his shoulder. He grunted but didn't slow, tackling me into the wall. Photographs fluttered to the ground as we crashed into the display. Up close, I could see his eyes through the mask, pale blue, eerily calm despite the violence of his movements. He had done this many times before. We struggled in the confined space, knocking over shelves, sending trophies and souvenirs clattering to the floor. His hands found my throat, squeezing with practiced precision. Spots danced in my vision as I thrashed desperately, my lungs burning for air. My fingers scrabbled against the floor, seeking anything to use as a weapon. They closed around something smooth and cylindrical, a screwdriver, ancient and rusted, but with a point still sharp enough for my purposes. With the last of my strength, I drove it upward into the side of his neck, just below the edge of his mask. Hot blood gushed over my hand as he made a wet, choking sound. His grip on my throat loosened. I pushed him off me, gasping for breath, scrambling to my feet. He writhed on the floor, hands clutching at the screwdriver still embedded in his neck, blood pooling beneath him. I should have run immediately, but something made me reach down and pull off his mask. I needed to see the face of someone who could do such things to other human beings. What I saw wasn't a monster, but an ordinary man, middle-aged, with graying stubble and unremarkable features contorted in pain. Somehow, that was more disturbing than any deformity or obvious madness would have been. He looked like someone you might pass on the street without a second glance. His eyes found mine, hatred burning in them even as life drained away. "They'll find you," he wheezed, blood bubbling between his lips. "We always find outsiders who don't belong." I backed toward the door, unable to look away from the dying man. "Why?" I asked, the single word encompassing all the horror I'd witnessed. "Why do this to people?" He smiled, teeth stained red. "This land remembers," he whispered cryptically. "The fire below needs feeding." His eyes glazed over, fixing on something I couldn't see. The sound of more voices in the distance broke the spell. I turned and ran. What followed was a desperate marathon through unfamiliar woods. I followed the service road until it connected with a wider trail, which eventually led to a paved road. The whole time, I could hear pursuit behind me. Vehicles in the distance, occasional shouts. Once, a gunshot rang out, the bullet splintering bark inches from my head. I flagged down a passing truck about 2 miles from where the trail met the road. The elderly driver took one look at my blood-covered state and almost drove off, but something in my eyes must have convinced him I was the one in danger, not the danger itself. That was 3 weeks ago. The state police found the shed exactly where I described it, but it had been cleared out. No photographs, no trophies, no blood on the floor. They found my wrecked van and, eventually, Mara's vehicle too, though there was no sign of her. The official report calls it a robbery gone wrong, suggests I imagine most of it due to head trauma and blood loss. But I know what I saw. I know what's happening in those woods outside Centralia. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see those photographs on the wall, the faces of people who came before me. I see Mara's expression as she disappeared into the fog. I hear the dying man's words. The fire below needs feeding. I don't live in my van anymore. I don't travel to remote places. I've moved to a crowded apartment building in Pittsburgh where I can always hear my neighbors through the thin walls. The constant noise is comforting now, but sometimes I wake in the night, certain I can smell smoke. Not the ordinary smoke of city life, but something older and more primal. And in those moments, I wonder if what's burning beneath Centralia isn't just coal, but something far more hungry, something fed by the collectors and their gruesome harvest. Something that might, one day, break through to the surface and consume us all. My name is Elena Morales. I'm 29 years old, and I've called Seattle home for as long as I can remember. That changed last year when I decided to embrace a nomadic lifestyle after my graphic design studio downsized during the recession. With my savings and a customized Sprinter van, I set out to travel while maintaining my freelance career remotely. The freedom was intoxicating. Waking up to different views, meeting fellow travelers, and documenting my journey through my illustrations. The reality of van life isn't always as glamorous as social media makes it seem. For every breathtaking sunrise over a national park, there are nights spent in Walmart parking lots, showering at truck stops, and dealing with unexpected breakdowns in places where cell service is a distant dream. Still, I wouldn't trade this life for anything. At least, that's what I thought until that week in Pennsylvania. I'd been making my way east from the Midwest, taking my time and enjoying the changing fall colors. October in Pennsylvania was spectacular. Rolling hills blanketed in crimson and gold, charming small towns with their Halloween decorations, and the crisp autumn air that made my morning coffee taste even better. I'd spent a few days around Pittsburgh before heading toward the Allegheny National Forest area, planning to stay there before continuing my journey. Through a Vanlife forum, I connected with another solo female traveler named Daphne Wright who recommended a secret spot near a place called Kinzua Bridge State Park. It's perfect for artists, she wrote. The ruins of the old railroad bridge are hauntingly beautiful, especially in the fog. There's a fire road about 2 miles before the official park entrance where you can camp undisturbed. Rangers never check it. The drive to Kinzua was beautiful, but increasingly remote. My GPS signal faded in and out as I wound through densely forested roads. The small towns I passed through seemed frozen in time, with weathered storefronts and locals who watched my van with undisguised curiosity. At a gas station in a town called Kane, the attendant, an older man with leathery skin and nicotine-stained fingers, studied me as I paid for fuel. Heading to the bridge, he asked, his voice gravelly from years of smoking. When I nodded, he hesitated before returning my credit card. Stick to the official campgrounds, he said. Some places around there, folks don't take kindly to outsiders setting up where they shouldn't. I thanked him for the advice, but didn't think much of it. I'd encountered similar warnings before, usually from locals who either wanted to protect their favorite spots or were simply suspicious of the van life movement in general. Besides, Daphne's recommendations had been reliable in the past. I found the fire road exactly where she described, unmarked except for a faded, no trespassing sign that looked decades old. The gravel path wound through a tunnel of ancient hemlocks and maples, their branches forming a canopy overhead that dimmed the late afternoon light. After about a mile, the trees opened to reveal a small clearing beside a creek, with the distant skeleton of the partially collapsed Kinzua Bridge visible through the trees. I positioned my van to maximize the view, leveled it carefully, and set up my outdoor space, a small folding table and chair where I planned to sketch the bridge at sunset. The location was perfect, secluded, picturesque, and completely silent except for the gentle gurgling of the creek and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. As twilight deepened, I noticed another vehicle parked farther down the clearing, almost hidden among the trees, a vintage Volkswagen bus painted a faded turquoise. I assumed it belonged to Daphne, who had mentioned she might be in the area. I considered walking over to introduce myself, but decided to finish my sketching first. The bridge was particularly striking as the sun set behind it, casting the twisted metal girders in silhouette against the crimson sky. I was so absorbed in capturing the scene that I barely registered the growing darkness until I could no longer see my sketchpad clearly. Packing up my supplies, I noticed something odd. The VW bus was now dark, but a flicker of light moved through the trees beyond it, like someone walking with a lantern. Probably just Daphne exploring, I thought, though something about the methodical way the light moved sent an uncomfortable shiver down my spine. Back in my van, I heated a simple dinner and settled in with my sketchbook to refine the bridge drawing. The night grew remarkably dark. No moon, no distant city glow, just an endless black canvas pricked by stars. I've always loved this aspect of remote camping, but that night, the darkness felt different somehow. Heavier, watchful. I drew my curtains closed and tried to shake off the sensation that the perfect silence outside wasn't peaceful at all, but expectant, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to begin. I woke suddenly at 3:17 a.m. according to my battery-powered clock. Something had pulled me from a deep sleep. A noise? A movement? My van was perfectly still, but every instinct told me something was wrong. I lay motionless, listening intently. The silence outside was almost oppressive. Not even the creek seemed to make a sound anymore. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic scraping against my van's exterior, too deliberate to be branches in the wind. It moved slowly from the rear toward the side door, pausing occasionally before continuing. My breath caught in my throat as I carefully reached for my phone. No signal, of course. I cursed silently, wishing I'd invested in a satellite communicator like some of my Vanlife friends had recommended. The scraping stopped directly outside my side door. In the dim glow of my small night light, I could see the handle move ever so slightly, someone testing to see if it was locked. Thank God for my obsessive security routine, a habit formed after hearing too many horror stories from solo female travelers. The lock held, but that did little to calm my racing heart. "Hello," I called out, trying to make my voice sound confident. "I can hear you out there. What do you want?" No response came, but the handle stopped moving. I grabbed my canister of bear spray from the compartment next to my bed, clutching it like a lifeline. After what seemed like an eternity, heavy footsteps crunched on the gravel, moving away from my van. I released the breath I'd been holding, only to tense again when I heard multiple voices murmuring nearby. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakably urgent. Were they talking about me? Planning something? I needed to see what I was dealing with. Cautiously, I parted my blackout curtains just enough to peer outside. The clearing was dimly visible in the starlight. 3 figures stood by the turquoise VW bus, their features indistinguishable in the darkness. One was gesturing toward my van while another nodded. The third figure, shorter, possibly female, seemed to be arguing with them, shaking her head emphatically. As I watched, one of the taller figures grabbed the smaller one's arm roughly. Even from this distance, I could see her struggling before being shoved toward my van. The taller figures retreated into the trees, taking their lantern with them, while the smaller one stood motionless for several moments before slowly making her way toward me. I gripped my bear spray tighter, heart hammering against my ribs. Should I start the engine and flee? But if the road was blocked somehow, I'd be trapped. Should I confront them? Hide? Every option seemed dangerous. A gentle knock on my window made me jump. "Elena," a female voice called softly. "It's Daphne. Please, I need to talk to you. It's important." So it was Daphne after all. But who were the others? And why had they manhandled her? Something felt very wrong, but I couldn't leave her standing out there if she was in trouble. "How do I know it's really you?" I called back, remembering we'd only communicated online. "You're from Seattle. You posted watercolor sketches of Monument Valley last month. Please, they'll come back soon." The details checked out. Cautiously, I cracked the door open while keeping the bear spray ready. In the dim light, I could make out a woman in her early 30s, her face pale and drawn, a fresh bruise darkening on her cheek. This had to be Daphne, but she looked nothing like her profile photos, which had shown a confident, smiling woman with bright eyes and a carefree expression. "What's going on?" I whispered as she climbed in. "Who were those people?" Daphne's hands trembled as she pushed her matted hair from her face. "We need to leave. Now. This isn't a safe place." Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry I brought you here. I didn't have a choice." "What do you mean you didn't have a choice?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "Daphne, you need to tell me what's happening." She glanced fearfully toward the trees where the figures had disappeared. "They call themselves the Kinzua Keepers. They've controlled this area for generations. She swallowed hard. They hunt people. Outsiders. Travelers. They make it look like accidents at the bridge. My blood ran cold. And you let me here? Why would you do that? Tears spilled down her cheeks. They have my sister. They caught us camping here 3 months ago. They let me go on the condition that I find others. Send them here. Her words tumbled out in a desperate rush. I tried to warn the others, tried to help them escape, but they always caught us. Every time. The horror of what she was saying sank in. How many? I whispered. How many people have you sent here? She wouldn't meet my eyes. 4 before you. None made it out. Her voice was barely audible. But it's different this time. They're distracted tonight. Something about a police investigation getting too close. We might actually have a chance if we leave right now. I wanted to hate her, to scream at her for luring me into this nightmare. But the desperation and shame in her eyes stopped me. She was as much a victim as I was. More so, having lived with this horror for months. But could I trust her? Was this just another trap? As I debated what to do, a beam of light swept across the clearing, accompanied by the low rumble of an engine. Someone was coming down the fire road. More of the keepers, or perhaps help. Daphne's face drained of what little color it had left. It's them, she whispered. We're too late. The approaching vehicle killed its lights as it entered the clearing, engine idling low. In the starlight, I could make out the silhouette of an old pickup truck, its bed covered with a tarp. 4 figures emerged, moving with the confident ease of predators in familiar territory. They carried what looked like hunting rifles and wore dark clothing that blended with the night. Get down, I hissed, pulling Daphne away from the windows. We crouched in the narrow space between my bed platform and the kitchen counter, barely breathing. Through a tiny gap in the curtains, I could see them spreading out, 2 approaching the VW bus, 1 moving toward the tree line, and 1 heading directly for my van. Is there another way out of here? I whispered to Daphne. Any road besides the one we came in on? She shook her head, eyes wide with fear. Just forest for miles. The bridge is the only landmark, but it's... She swallowed hard. It's where they take people, where they make the accidents happen. The sound of boots on gravel grew closer. A flashlight beam swept across my van's exterior, lingering on the license plate. Washington plates, a man's voice called out. Must be the one Richard spotted in Kane. Said she was asking about the bridge. Check if she's inside. Another voice responded, older, authoritative. Tanner, go make sure our friend's bus is empty. She has a habit of trying to warn them. My mind raced. They knew about Daphne's attempts to help previous victims. If they checked her VW and found it empty, they'd know she was with me. We had minutes, maybe seconds. Start the engine, Daphne whispered urgently. Ram through them if you have to. It's our only chance. I hesitated, the thought of deliberately hitting someone with my vehicle. Even these monsters, making me nauseous. But what choice did we have? I crawled toward the driver's seat, keeping low. The keys were in their hiding spot beneath the seat. I reached for them just as a sharp knock rattled my side door. Park Ranger, called a deceptively friendly voice. Just checking to make sure everything's all right. This area is not safe for camping. I froze, keys clutched in my sweating palm. They were lying. No legitimate ranger would be out here at this hour. Beside me, Daphne frantically mouthed go while pointing at the ignition. The knocking came again, harder. Ma'am, I need you to open up. There's been reports of a dangerous fugitive in the area. I slid into the driver's seat, inserted the key, and turned it in one fluid motion. The engine roared to life, startling the man at my door. I caught a glimpse of his face in my side mirror, weathered, bearded, eyes widening in surprise before hardening with rage. He shouted something to the others as I threw the van into reverse. The back window exploded inward as a rifle shot tore through it. Glass rained down on my bed as I slammed the accelerator, the van lurching backward. I heard a thud and a cry of pain. I'd hit someone. Guilt and survival instinct warred within me as I shifted to drive and spun the wheel, aiming for the fire road. More shots rang out. The windshield spiderwebbed, but held as bullets struck it. Daphne screamed, clutching her shoulder, blood seeping between her fingers. Keep going, she gasped. Don't stop. The headlights illuminated the narrow fire road as I sped away from the clearing, branches slapping against the sides of the van. In the rearview mirror, I could see the pickup's lights flaring to life as they gave chase. I pressed the accelerator to the floor, praying the winding road wouldn't send us crashing into the trees. They know these roads better than we do. Daphne said through gritted teeth, pain evident in her voice. We can't outrun them for long. She was right. Already the pickup's lights were growing larger in my mirrors, gaining on us despite my reckless speed. The fire road was too narrow for them to pass, but that wouldn't matter if they shot out my tires or forced me off the path. Is there anywhere we can hide? I asked desperately. Anywhere they wouldn't follow. Daphne's face was alarmingly pale in the dashboard lights, but her eyes suddenly lit with an idea. The bridge, she said. The actual Kinzua Bridge. Parts of it are still standing. There's maintenance scaffolding underneath. Workers have been reinforcing it. They're superstitious about the bridge at night. They think it's haunted by their victims. It seemed like a terrible idea, heading exactly where they normally took their victims, but we had no better options. The main road was still at least a mile ahead, and the pickup was closing fast. A bullet pinged off my side mirror, making me flinch. How do I get there? I asked, swerving to make us a harder target. Next right, Daphne gasped, pressing harder on her wounded shoulder. Unmarked path. Leads to a service area. I almost missed it, a gap in the trees barely wider than my van. I wrenched the wheel, feeling the vehicle tilt alarmingly as we left the fire road. Branches scraped against the sides like claws as we plunged down a steep, overgrown track. The pickup's lights disappeared behind us, but I could hear them braking hard, likely preparing to follow. The path opened suddenly onto a gravel lot, the maintenance area for the bridge. Ahead of us loomed the enormous silhouette of the Kinzua Bridge, its remaining sections stretching across the dark void of the valley like the skeleton of some prehistoric beast. The collapsed portions created a jagged profile against the starry sky. There, Daphne pointed weakly to a chain-link fence with a service gate. Through there, we can hide under the structure. I crashed through the gate, metal screaming as it gave way. The headlights illuminated a narrow access road that wound down beneath the bridge's surviving spans. Construction equipment sat abandoned for the night. A small bulldozer, stacks of lumber, scaffolding that clung to the underside of the bridge like a metal web. I killed the lights and engine, plunging us into darkness. The silence was broken only by Daphne's labored breathing and, in the distance, the sound of the pickup making its way down the overgrown path. They were still coming. We need to move, I whispered, reaching for my small emergency medical kit. But first, let me see that shoulder. As I turned on my small flashlight, Daphne's face came into sharp focus, and with it, a detail that turned my blood to ice. Around her neck hung a crude pendant I hadn't noticed before, a miniature replica of the Kinzua Bridge made from what looked like bone. She saw me staring, and her expression shifted, the fear giving way to something darker, more resigned. I'm sorry, Elena, she whispered. I truly am. But there's no escaping the keepers. Not really. Not ever. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. You're one of them, I breathed, recoiling from her. The medical supplies scattered across the center console as I lunged for the door handle. Not by choice, Daphne said, her voice hollow. Never by choice. She made no move to stop me as I flung the door open. But it doesn't matter now. They'll find you. They always do. I stumbled out into the darkness beneath the bridge, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly as I ran toward the scaffolding. Behind me, the pickup's engine grew louder, headlights cutting through the trees as it approached the service area. I had seconds to disappear. The scaffolding rose in a complex grid of metal pipes and wooden platforms, following the contours of the bridge's massive support piers. I shoved the flashlight into my pocket and began to climb, ignoring the rusty metal that bit into my palms. Each movement made the structure creak ominously, but I didn't slow down. 20 feet up, I reached a maintenance platform and pressed myself against the cold stone of the bridge pier, trying to control my ragged breathing. Below, the pickup skidded to a halt near my van. Flashlight beams swept the area as 4 figures emerged. I couldn't make out their faces from this height, but their movements were purposeful, practiced. They'd done this before. She knows. I heard Daphne's voice call out. She was standing beside my van now, one hand still pressed to her bleeding shoulder. I had to tell her everything. The oldest man, the leader, judging by how the others deferred to him, approached Daphne slowly. You disappoint me, girl. Again. His voice carried clearly in the night air. Where is she? I don't know. She ran when she realized. Headed toward the bridge, I think. The man turned to the others. Spread out. Check under every platform. She can't have gone far. He gestured to the youngest of the group. Tanner, stay with our friend here. Make sure she doesn't try to warn this one too. They began to search, methodically sweeping the area beneath the bridge. I pressed tighter against the pier, willing myself to become invisible in the shadows. My platform was high enough that their flashlights hadn't reached it yet, but it was only a matter of time. I needed to move, to find a better hiding place or a way out of this nightmare. The bridge stretched above me, its rusted girders forming a complex latticework against the sky. If I could climb higher, reach the track level, perhaps I could cross to the other side of the valley. But the remaining sections of track hung over a 300-foot drop to the valley floor. One wrong step would be fatal. A flashlight beam swept dangerously close to my platform. I held my breath, heart pounding so loudly I was certain they could hear it. The beam moved on, but they were working their way toward me systematically. I had no choice but to climb higher. Reaching above me, I found a cross brace and pulled myself up, moving as silently as possible. The ancient steel groaned softly under my weight. I froze, but the sound was covered by the wind that had begun to pick up, whistling through the bridge's skeletal remains. I continued climbing, using the maintenance scaffolding until it ended, then navigating the actual bridge structure itself, a precarious journey of rusted beams and crumbling rivets. Finally, I hauled myself onto what remained of the track level, lying flat against the weathered wooden ties to catch my breath. From this vantage point, I could see the entire search party below, the three men methodically checking the scaffolding, Tanner standing guard over Daphne by the vehicles. They hadn't spotted me yet, but dawn was approaching, the eastern sky beginning to lighten. I wouldn't be able to hide in darkness much longer. Looking ahead, I saw that the intact section of bridge extended about 100 yards before ending abruptly where the collapse had occurred. The drop to the valley floor was dizzyingly steep. No scaffolding or maintenance platforms on this upper level. The far side of the valley, where the bridge would have connected, was at least a quarter-mile away. No escape that way. A shout from below made me flinch. One of the searchers had found the scaffolding I'd climbed. Footprints in the dust. She went up. Flashlight beams immediately swung upward. I scrambled backward, moving away from the edge where I might be spotted. The only direction left was forward, toward the collapsed section. I began crawling along the track bed, staying as low as possible. The ties were slick with morning dew, forcing me to move carefully. One slip would send me plummeting through the gaps between them. I could hear the men below shouting to each other, organizing to follow my path up the scaffolding. They'd reach the track level soon. The end of the intact bridge section loomed ahead, a jagged break where the structure had twisted and fallen during a tornado decades earlier. Beyond it, nothing but open air and the distant valley floor. I'd reached a literal dead end. Desperately, I scanned the area for options. The railroad ties continued right to the edge of the break, but just before the collapse, a maintenance ladder descended along one of the main support piers. It was my only chance. Climb down and try to reach the valley floor before they caught up. I was inching toward the ladder when a flashlight beam caught me directly. There she is, a voice shouted from behind. One of the men had reached the track level and spotted me silhouetted against the lightening sky. Abandoning stealth, I scrambled toward the ladder. A gunshot cracked through the dawn air, the bullet splintering a railroad tie inches from my hand. I reached the ladder and swung onto it, nearly losing my grip on the dew-slicked metal. The descent was terrifying, 60 feet of rusted rungs with nothing but air on three sides. The ladder shuddered as someone else grabbed it above me. I looked up to see one of the younger men climbing down after me, his rifle slung across his back. Nowhere left to run, he called down, a disturbing eagerness in his voice. Just make it easy on yourself. I climbed faster, my hands slipping on the wet metal. 20 feet from the ground, I felt the ladder shake violently as a second person started down from above. The added weight caused one of the ancient bolts securing it to the pier to tear free with a screech of protesting metal. The ladder lurched sideways, now hanging precariously by its remaining attachments. My pursuer shouted in alarm, clinging tightly as we swung out over the valley. For a terrifying moment, I thought the entire structure would tear free, sending us both plummeting to our deaths. But the remaining bolts held, barely. We were now suspended over a 30-foot drop to a steep, rocky slope rather than directly above the service area. Below me, I could see loose shale and scrub brush leading down to the valley floor. The man above me had frozen in place, clearly terrified by our precarious position. This was my chance. I looked down, judged the distance, and made a desperate decision. I let go. The fall seemed to last forever. I hit the slope hard, unable to keep my footing on the loose shale. I tumbled and slid downward, rocks tearing at my clothes and skin. Pain exploded in my ankle as it twisted beneath me, but adrenaline kept me moving. Somehow, I managed to control my descent enough to avoid the larger boulders. I came to a stop at the bottom of the slope, battered and bleeding but alive. Above me, the man still clung to the damaged ladder, shouting for help from his companions. I had maybe minutes before they found another way down. Dawn had broken fully now, revealing the dense forest that covered the valley floor. If I could reach those trees, I might have a chance to lose them. Ignoring the pain shooting through my injured ankle, I limped toward the tree line as fast as I could manage. Behind me, I heard voices shouting, coordinating their pursuit. A gunshot rang out, but I was already at the edge of the forest, the bullet harmlessly splintering bark beside me. Then I was among the trees, the dense undergrowth concealing me from view. I kept moving, pushing through branches and brambles, putting as much distance as possible between myself and the bridge. My ankle throbbed with each step, threatening to give out entirely. But stopping meant death, or whatever fate the Kinzua keepers had planned for me that was worse than death. The forest grew thicker, discouraging pursuit but making my progress painfully slow. I had no idea which direction led to civilization, no compass, no phone with GPS. All I knew was that I needed to keep moving, keep ahead of the hunters who knew these woods far better than I did. As I stumbled through a small clearing, I heard it, the distant sound of traffic. A road. Hope surged through me, giving new strength to my battered body. I changed course, heading toward the sound, each step of victory against the pain and exhaustion threatening to overwhelm me. The trees began to thin. Through the branches ahead, I caught a glimpse of asphalt. I was almost there when a figure stepped into my path, rifle raised. It was the leader, somehow having circled ahead of me. His weathered face showed no emotion as he leveled the weapon at my chest. "Folks like you never learn," he said quietly. "This land isn't for outsiders." I had no strength left to run, nowhere left to hide. As I stood there, swaying with exhaustion, a horn blared from the road beyond the trees. We both turned toward the sound. A state police cruiser had pulled to the side of the road, its roof lights flashing. A voice called out over a loudspeaker. "This is the Pennsylvania State Police. We're conducting a search of the area. Anyone in these woods, please identify yourself." The leader's eyes widened with genuine fear, the first emotion I'd seen from him. Without a word, he melted back into the forest, disappearing as silently as he'd arrived. The miracle of timing left me dizzy with relief. I stumbled the last few yards to the road and collapsed in full view of the startled state troopers. I spent 3 days in the regional hospital, being treated for dehydration, exposure, a severely sprained ankle, and dozens of cuts and bruises. The state police were initially skeptical of my story, assuming I was just another tourist who'd gotten lost after illegally camping near the bridge. But when they ran the license plate from my van, which we retrieved once I was stable enough to guide them back, everything changed. The van's previous owner, a woman named Lydia Chun, had been reported missing 6 months earlier in Oregon. She'd last been seen heading east on a solo road trip. The vehicle had been officially transferred to me with forged documents. I'd bought it through an online marketplace, never suspecting its grim history. Detective Wells, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, sat at my bedside on the 3rd day. "We found blood traces in your van that don't match yours," she said carefully. "Multiple samples, actually. One matches Lydia Chun. The others are still being processed, but preliminary results suggest at least 3 different individuals." "I didn't do anything to those people," I whispered, horror washing over me. "You have to believe me." She nodded slowly. "I do, especially after what we found at the bridge." While searching the area where I'd encountered the Kinzua keepers, police discovered a series of hidden chambers beneath the bridge's main piers, spaces that had been incorporated into the structure during its original construction in the 1880s and forgotten over time. Inside were items belonging to at least a dozen missing travelers dating back several years. We believe they used your van as a lure, Detective Wells explained. A vehicle with a woman traveling alone would make other solo female travelers more likely to trust the situation. They'd spot potential victims in the surrounding towns, then use Daphne to guide them to isolated areas. Daphne, I said, suddenly remembering. Did you find her? Is she alive? Wells' expression turned grim. We found a woman's body at the base of the bridge. Gunshot wound to the head. She matches the description you gave us, including the shoulder injury. We're still waiting on formal identification. I closed my eyes, overcome with conflicting emotions. Daphne had lured me into a trap, but she'd also tried to warn me, to help me escape. Had she been a willing participant or another victim forced to participate through threats and coercion? I'd never know for certain. What about the men? The keepers? I asked. No sign of them yet. We've identified some suspects based on your descriptions. A family named Tesler that's lived in the area for generations. The patriarch, Calvin Tesler, has a history of complaints about outsiders trespassing on what he considers his land, though he has no legal claim to the bridge area. They seem to have gone to ground, but we'll find them. She didn't sound entirely convinced of that last part, and neither was I. People who had managed to hunt and kill travelers for years without detection wouldn't be easy to track down, especially in a region they knew intimately. A week later, I was released from the hospital. My van, Lydia Chen's van, remained in police custody as evidence. I stayed at a motel in the nearest town while waiting for a friend to drive out from Cleveland to take me home with her. I'd had enough of traveling alone for a while. The night before my friend arrived, I woke to a soft tapping at my motel room window. Terror gripped me as I remembered that same sound against my van. I nearly called the front desk, but instead forced myself to peer through a gap in the curtains. Nothing was there, just the empty parking lot and the dark road beyond. As I turned away, relief washing over me, my eye caught something small wedged into the window frame. A piece of paper folded tightly and pushed through the slight gap where the window didn't quite meet the sill. With trembling fingers, I retrieved it and unfolded it under the harsh bathroom light. The note was brief, written in a shaky hand. They never stop hunting. Not until they've taken what they believe they're owed. Leave Pennsylvania. Never return. It wasn't signed, but I knew it had to be from another survivor. Someone who had encountered the keepers and lived to tell about it. I burned the note in the bathroom sink, watching the paper curl and blacken. The police had promised protection, believed my story, assured me the Teslers would be caught. But the note confirmed what I'd suspected since my escape. Official reassurances meant nothing against a family that had turned hunting humans into a generational ritual. When my friend arrived the next morning, I threw my few remaining possessions into her car and never looked back. We drove west with the windows up and the doors locked, stopping only when absolutely necessary, and never in small towns. I kept expecting to see headlights following us, to spot a weathered face watching from a roadside diner, to hear that soft tapping at the window in every motel room. I'm back in Seattle now, living in a small apartment downtown where the constant noise of traffic and people is comforting rather than intrusive. I've given up on van life. Something about the vulnerability of sleeping in a vehicle, of being alone in remote places, has lost its appeal. Detective Wells still calls occasionally with updates. They found more bodies, 8 in total, buried around the bridge area. The Teslers remain at large, though their property stands abandoned. Locals claim they've moved on, perhaps to another rural area where they can continue their gruesome traditions without scrutiny. Sometimes, I find myself looking at maps of Pennsylvania, tracing the roads around Kinzua Bridge State Park. In my nightmares, I'm still climbing that rusted ladder, still running through those dense woods with footsteps always just behind me. Sometimes in the dreams, I see Daphne watching from the trees, the bone pendant gleaming against her throat, her eyes sad but resigned. I wonder how many other travelers are out there right now, following recommendations to visit secret, beautiful spots off the beaten path. How many are receiving friendly messages from fellow vanlifers they've never met, suggestions for remote locations with spectacular views? How many are parking their homes on wheels in clearings they believe are safe, drawing their curtains as darkness falls, unaware of eyes watching from the trees? And I wonder how many will never return to tell their stories. Dust swirled around my van's tires as I pulled off the highway. I'm Elias Carter, 32 years old, and I call Seattle home, though I haven't been there in months. The open road's been my life since I converted this old Sprinter into a rolling apartment. Pennsylvania wasn't where I planned to be tonight, but a freelance graphic design gig brought me here. I was bone tired, the kind of tired that makes your eyes sting. My van, nicknamed Drifter, hummed softly as I scanned for a place to park. The outskirts of Erie felt quiet, almost too quiet, but that's what I wanted. Just me, my van, and a night to recharge before heading south. I found a spot near an old industrial lot, tucked behind some overgrown bushes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hidden. Vanlife's all about stealth. Blend in, don't get noticed. I'd done this 100 times. Park somewhere out of sight, cook dinner, sleep, move on. Erie's vibe felt off, though. The air had this heavy, sour tang, like something rotting nearby. I shook it off, chalking it up to the nearby lake, or maybe just my imagination after too many horror podcasts. I locked the doors, double-checked the curtains, and fired up my tiny stove to heat some soup. Inside Drifter, it's cozy. I've got a bed rigged up in the back, a small sink, and shelves crammed with books and gear. My laptop sat open, glowing faintly as I sketched a logo for a client. The world outside didn't exist when I was in here. It was just me and my little fortress. But tonight, I kept glancing at the windows. The curtains were drawn tight, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I laughed it off. Elias, you're just tired, I told myself. Still, I turned the radio on low, letting some old rock tunes fill the silence. Earlier that day, I'd stopped at a diner in town. The waitress, a woman named Marla with tired eyes, warned me about staying out too late. Folks go missing around here sometimes, she'd said, half joking. I'd smiled, tipped her well, and forgotten about it. Now, her words crept back, making the quiet seem louder. I sipped my soup, trying to focus on the warmth spreading through me. Vanlife's freedom comes with quirks, random noises, weird vibes. You get used to it. Or so I thought. My phone buzzed with a text from my buddy Nate, who's also a Vanlifer. He's 28, a wiry guy with a beard that makes him look like he's auditioning for a Viking movie. He was parked somewhere in Ohio, chasing a music festival. Yo, Erie sketchy, his text read. Heard some wild stories. Stay sharp. I rolled my eyes. Nate's always dramatic, but his timing was uncanny. I texted back, just chilling, no worries. Famous last words, right? I set the phone down and tried to settle in. The lot I'd picked was near an old factory, its smokestacks looming like skeletal fingers against the sky. I'd seen places like this before, run down, forgotten, perfect for a night stealth parking. But something about this one felt wrong, like the ground itself was holding its breath. I told myself it was just the exhaustion talking. I'd driven 10 hours straight, and my brain was playing tricks. Still, I grabbed my flashlight and checked the locks again, a habit I'd picked up after a close call in Nevada. I thought about my sister, Lena, back in Seattle. She's 35, a nurse with a no-nonsense attitude. She hates that I live like this, calls it glorified homelessness. I'd promised to call her tomorrow, maybe send a goofy photo to prove I was alive. That thought grounded me. I wasn't alone, not really, just a guy in a van, chasing freedom. I climbed into bed, the familiar creak of the mattress comforting. The world outside could wait. I pulled the blanket up and closed my eyes. Sleep didn't come easy. Every rustle outside made my heart jump. I told myself it was just animals, raccoons, maybe, or the wind. But the air felt thick, oppressive, like it was pressing against the van. I kept my knife under the pillow, another habit from the road. It's not much, just a folding blade, but it's enough to feel like I've got some control. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering why this place felt so damn disturbing. Finally, I drifted towards sleep, the hum of the van's battery lulling me. But just as my eyes closed, something scratched against the side of Drifter. Not loud, but deliberate, like a nail dragging across metal. My breath caught. I sat up, heart pounding, and listened. Nothing, just silence. I told myself it was a branch, or maybe a stray cat. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. My heart was still racing from that scratch on the van. I sat frozen, clutching the knife under my pillow, ears straining for any sound. The silence was worse than the noise. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for me to move. I told myself to chill. I grabbed my flashlight and flicked it on, the beam cutting through the dim interior of Drifter. Everything looked normal: my laptop, my stove, my messy pile of clothes. Still, I couldn't shake the horror creeping up my spine. I crept to the window and peeked through a slit in the curtain. The lot was dark, the factory's silhouette looming like a giant crouching in the shadows. Nothing moved. No animals, no wind, just that sour smell hanging heavy. I thought about starting the van and bolting, but I'd driven too long to trust myself on the road. Fatigue makes you stupid. I learned that the hard way once, nearly swerving into a ditch in Oregon. So, I stayed put, telling myself I was overreacting. But I slid the knife into my pocket, just in case. Better safe than sorry, right? Back in bed, I tried to distract myself with my phone. I scrolled through texts, landing on one from Nate again. Erie's got bad juju, man. Old factory district especially. I snorted, Nate and his ghost stories. But then I remembered Marla at the diner, her warning about people vanishing. My thumb hovered over the screen. Should I text Lena? Nah, it was 2 a.m. in Seattle. She'd just worry and lecture me about settling down. Still, the thought of her voice would have been nice right about now. I set the phone down and checked the van's battery monitor. It was low. Crap. I'd left the heater running too long. Rookie mistake, Elias. I shut it off, but now the cold started creeping in, making the walls feel thinner. Vanlife's full of these little screw-ups. Like the time I forgot to secure my water tank and flooded the floor. You laugh it off later, but in the moment, it's a pain. I bundled up in an extra blanket, trying to ignore how exposed I felt without the heater's hum. Then I heard it again, a faint scrape, this time near the back door. My stomach dropped. It wasn't loud, but it was too rhythmic, like someone testing the handle. I held my breath, waiting. Nothing. I told myself it was paranoia, but my body wasn't buying it. Every muscle was taut, ready to spring. I thought about yelling, scaring off whatever it was, but that felt like a bad move. What if it wasn't an animal? What if it was something worse? The idea felt ridiculous, but this place had me rattled. I grabbed my flashlight again and checked the locks, all secure. But as I moved, my foot knocked over a mug, and it clattered to the floor. The noise was deafening in the quiet. I froze, cursing under my breath. If something was out there, it definitely heard that. My mind raced. Should I stay quiet? Start the engine? Call someone? I wasn't thinking straight, and that's when you make mistakes. Like the time I parked too close to a river and woke up to a flooded axle. Focus, Elias. I decided to check the cameras. I'd installed a cheap security system a year ago, 2 tiny cams on the van's exterior. The feed was grainy, but it was better than nothing. I opened the app, my hands shaky. The rear camera showed the lot, empty except for some scattered debris. But the side camera, something flickered at the edge of the frame. Just for a second, like a shadow moving too fast. My heart slammed against my ribs. I replayed it, but the image was gone. Glitch? Or something scarier? I sat back, trying to calm down. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. But then I noticed my phone's signal was gone. No bars, no Wi-Fi. That wasn't normal. I'd had service earlier. Erie's not the middle of nowhere. My gut twisted. I told myself it was a tower issue, but the timing felt too perfect. I glanced at the knife in my pocket. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. I needed a plan, but my brain was stuck, replaying that flicker on the camera. As I sat there, the van felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I kept thinking about what Marla said, people going missing. Was she just messing with me, or was there something to it? I didn't know, but the air was getting colder, and the silence was too loud. Then, just as I reached for my keys, I heard a new sound. Not a scrape this time, but a low, muffled thud, like something heavy hitting the ground outside. The eerie lot was pitch black beyond my curtains, and that sour smell seemed stronger, clawing its way inside. My flashlight trembled in my grip, but I didn't dare turn it on. Whatever made that noise was close, too close, and the horror of it sank into my bones. I crouched low, peering at the camera app again, praying it was just a raccoon knocking over trash. But deep down, I knew better. The screen flickered, then steadied. The rear camera showed nothing but empty pavement. The side one, though, there it was again. A shape, human-sized, at the edge of the frame. Not clear enough to make out details, just a blur of motion before it vanished. My breath caught, sharp and loud in the quiet. I replayed the clip, heart hammering. There, gone. Like it knew I was watching. My mind screamed glitch, but my gut said something scarier was out there, stalking my van. I clutched my knife tighter, its weight a flimsy comfort. I thought about Nate, his dumb warnings about Erie. Why didn't I listen? I could have been halfway to Pittsburgh by now, not stuck here with some thing circling me. The air felt heavier, like it was pressing me down. I tried the phone again. No signal, still. That wasn't a coincidence. Something was wrong, seriously wrong, and I was alone in a tin box with no way to call for help. Panic clawed at me, but I forced it back. Freaking out wouldn't fix this. I crawled to the driver's seat, keeping low. Starting the van was my best bet. Get out, find a gas station, anywhere with people. But as I reached for the ignition, I heard it. A low, guttural hum. Not mechanical, not animal, human, but warped, like a voice dragged through gravel. It was faint, coming from the back of the van. My skin went cold. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The hum stopped, then started again, closer. It wasn't singing or talking, just this disturbing drone, like someone testing how close they could get. I thought about Lena, how she'd lose it if she knew I was in this mess. She'd always said the road would bite me one day. Was this it? I shook the thought off. Focus, Elias. I checked the mirrors, nothing but darkness. But that hum, it was moving, circling now. I pictured someone out there, pacing around Drifter, sizing it up. My van's stealth setup, blackout curtains, no logos, was supposed to keep me invisible. But tonight, it felt like a beacon, screaming, "Here's a guy alone." Then came a new sound, a faint tap on the back door. Not hard, just deliberate, like a knuckle testing the metal. My heart stopped. I gripped the keys so tight they bit into my palm. Another tap, then silence. I waited, every second stretching into forever. I wanted to scream, to slam the horn, anything to break this nightmare. But that'd be a mistake, like the time I yelled at a sketchy guy in a Walmart lot and nearly got jumped. Stay quiet, stay alive. I slid back to the cameras, desperate for answers. The side feed was dead now, blank screen. The rear one showed something worse. A shadow stretching across the pavement, too tall, too thin to be normal. It didn't move, just stood there, like it was waiting for me to notice. My mouth went dry. This wasn't a prank or some bored local. This was real, and it was bad. I thought of Marla's warning again, people disappearing. Was this what she meant? Was I next? I forced myself to think. The van was locked, armored glass, deadbolts. I was safe, right? But that shadow, it shifted, leaning closer to the van. The hum came back, louder, vibrating through the walls. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys. I had to get out now. But what if they were waiting? What if starting the engine was what they wanted? I was second-guessing everything, trapped in my own head, and it was making me sloppy. Then the tapping started again, faster, all around the van, back, sides, even the roof. Like multiple hands, probing, searching for a way in. The noise was chaotic, relentless, and it hit me. This wasn't one person. There were more out there, and they weren't just messing around. Something was horribly, unmistakably wrong, and I was in the middle of it. My hands shook as I jammed the keys into the ignition. No more waiting. I had to move, or I was done. The engine roared to life, headlights slicing through the dark, and for a split second, I saw them, figures darting just beyond the light. Too fast, too wrong, their shapes twisting in ways that made my stomach lurch. I slammed the gas, tires screeching, and tore out of the lot, horror choking me. Gravel sprayed as I hit the road, my heart slamming so hard I thought it had burst. The pounding stopped, but that chant followed, faint but clear, like it was stuck in the air itself. I glanced in the side mirrors, nothing but darkness. Were they chasing me? Could they? My mind flashed to a story Nate told me once, about hitchhikers who weren't human, luring drivers off lonely roads. I'd laughed then. Not now. The steering wheel was slick with sweat, my knife useless in my pocket. I needed lights, people, anything to break this nightmare. Erie's streets were empty, though, and that felt scarier than the lot. I fishtailed onto a main road, signs pointing toward downtown. My phone was still dead, no signal, no GPS. I was flying blind, picking turns at random. Bad move. I'd gotten lost like this in Utah once, stuck in a canyon with no map. This was worse. Every shadow seemed alive, every corner hiding something ready to lunge. I kept the pedal down, pushing 60 in a 35 zone. If cops stopped me, fine, at least they'd be human. But the streets stayed deserted, like Erie had been abandoned to whatever was after me. Then I saw it. A flicker in the rear view. A figure, running, keeping pace with the van. Not possible. I was going too fast. I blinked, and it was gone, but my pulse didn't slow. Was it real? My brain was fraying, mixing fear with exhaustion. I thought of Lena, how she'd beg me to quit this life if she knew. I wanted to call her, hear her voice, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. I swerved around a pothole, nearly clipping a curb. Focus, Elias. One mistake, and I was theirs, whatever they were. Streetlights flickered ahead, a gas station glowing like a beacon. I aimed for it, praying it wasn't empty. The chanting was gone now, but the silence was worse, heavy with threat. I hit the brakes, skidding into the lot. The station was open, a clerk inside, oblivious behind the counter. I didn't dare get out yet. I scanned the mirrors, the windows, expecting those shapes to rush me. Nothing moved. My breath was ragged, hands locked on the wheel. Was I safe? Or had I just delayed the inevitable? I grabbed my knife, holding it like a lifeline. The clerk glanced up, probably wondering why I was parked like a maniac. I wanted to run inside, beg for help, but what would I say? Creepy people chased me. He'd think I was nuts. I'd done that once in Arizona, ranted to a ranger about a weird noise, and got laughed off. This was different, though real, raw, disturbing. I checked the cameras again. Blank. Either they were busted, or something broke them. Both options sucked. My eyes darted to the road I'd come from. No headlights, no movement. Maybe I'd lost them, but my gut screamed I wasn't clear yet. I thought about Marla's warning, people vanishing. Was this how it happened? Lure someone out, hunt them down? I shook my head, trying to stay sharp. Vanlife taught me to trust my instincts, like when I dodged a sketchy campsite in Idaho. Those instincts were roaring now. Move, don't stop. I eased the van forward, circling the station, watching every angle. The clerk was still there, mopping the floor, normal as hell. It felt wrong, like the world was mocking me. I needed a plan, find a motel, a crowded lot, anywhere but here. But as I pulled toward the exit, something thudded under the van, hard, like I'd hit debris. I froze. The engine whined, but I didn't stop. Whatever it was, I wasn't checking. Not tonight. Not with them out there. I gunned it again, the station shrinking in my mirrors. The thud echoed in my head, a sick reminder I wasn't free. My hands were numb, my chest tight. I didn't know where I was going, just away. The road stretched dark and endless, and for the first time, I wondered if I'd make it out of Erie. The horror wasn't just behind me. It was everywhere, sinking deeper with every mile. The road was desolate, no signs of life, just trees clawing at the sky. My phone was still useless, and that thud under the van kept replaying in my mind, each memory more disturbing. Had I hit something? Someone? The thought made me sick, but stopping wasn't an option. Not with whatever was out there. I spotted a turnoff, a narrow dirt road leading into the woods. Bad idea, I knew, but the main road felt too exposed, like I was begging to be found. I'd made snap calls before, like when I camped off-grid in Montana and dodged a storm. This felt different, though reckless. I took the turn, the van bouncing over ruts. Branches scraped the roof, sounding too much like those taps from earlier. My knife was in my lap now, blade out. If they came for me, I'd fight. Stupid, maybe, but it was all I had. The road dead-ended at a clearing, an old campsite by the look of it. Fire pit, rotted picnic table, trash scattered around. I killed the headlights, plunging everything into black. My breathing was loud, too loud. I listened for that chant, those footsteps, anything. Just crickets. I should have felt relieved, but the quiet was worse, like a trap waiting to spring. I thought of Nate, how he'd say I was an idiot for coming here. He wasn't wrong. I'd screwed up, and now I was cornered. I locked the doors again, checking each one twice. The van felt like a coffin, the air thick with that sour stink. I cracked a window, just an inch, desperate for fresh air. Big mistake. Something moved outside, fast, rustling through the brush. My heart stopped. I slammed the window shut, fumbling with the locks. The knife slipped, slicing my palm. Blood dripped, warm and sticky, but I barely felt it. The horror was real now, closing in, and I'd just given it an opening. I grabbed a shirt to wrap my hand, cursing myself. Blood's a beacon. Animals, people, whatever they were, they'd smell it. I'd learned that hunting with my dad as a kid, blood draws predators. I scanned the windows, but the curtains blocked everything. I didn't dare look. Then I heard it, a low laugh, human but wrong, like it was mocking me. It was close, right outside the van. My blood ran cold. They'd found me. I'd led them here, thinking I could hide. I slid to the driver's seat, ready to floor it. But the key wouldn't turn. The engine sputtered, then died. No. I tried again. Nothing. The battery was drained, or worse. I'd ignored the warning light earlier, too panicked to think. Another mistake, and this one was deadly. The laugh came again, joined by others, circling the van. I gripped the knife, my hand slick with blood. The van rocked slightly, like someone leaned against it. They were toying with me, savoring the fear. I thought of Lena, her face flashing in my mind. I'd never call her now, never hear her nag me again. The realization hit like a blade. I'd chosen this life, freedom, the road, but it had led me here, to this trap. The van shook harder, metal groaning. I yelled, a raw, desperate sound, hoping to scare them off. It didn't. The laughs grew louder, sharper, and something heavy slammed the roof. I ducked, heart exploding. They were on me, everywhere. I crawled to the back, knife raised, ready to swing at anything that broke through. My blood was all over the floor now, marking my path. The van rocked again, harder, like they were trying to flip it. I screamed for help, knowing no one would hear. The windows held, but for how long? I thought of Marla, her warning, and wished I'd listened. The horror wasn't just them. It was me, my choices, my arrogance, thinking I could outrun the dark. Then, silence. No laughs, no slams, just my ragged breathing. I waited, knife trembling, blood pooling under me. Had they left? I didn't believe it. I couldn't. I sat there, trapped in Drifter, my home turned prison, knowing I'd made the last mistake of my life. The road had finally won. The van's engine ticked as it cooled, parked in a shadowed corner of Erie's waterfront. I'm Nora Delaney, 29 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon, when I'm not chasing the road. My rig, a beat-up Ford Transit I call Wander, is my home. Wooden shelves, a fold-out bed, a stove that's seen better days. I'd come to Pennsylvania for a mural commission, painting a community center's wall. The gig was done, but I wasn't ready to leave. Erie's moody vibe, all gray water and rusted piers, pulled me in. Tonight, I picked a spot near Presqu'Isle Bay, hidden by some scraggly trees. It felt private, perfect for a quiet night. I locked the doors and lit a candle, its flicker warming Wander's cozy interior. The bay was calm, waves lapping softly, but the air had a bite, sharp, like something sour lingered. I shrugged it off, blaming the fishy scent of the lake. After a long day sketching, I needed rest. My phone pinged with a text from my friend Clara, a 31-year-old photographer who'd been crashing at my place back in Portland. "Don't get eaten by lake monsters," she teased. I laughed, texting back a shark emoji. Clara's always got jokes, but I wish she was here. Solo van life hits different at night. Inside, I heated ramen on the stove, the hiss of the burner grounding me. Wander's my sanctuary, every inch customized, from the fairy lights to the rug I nabbed at a flea market. But tonight, the bay's quiet felt heavy, like it was watching me. I double-checked the curtains, a habit from too many creepy rest stops. Last year, some drunk guy banged on my door in Nevada, yelling nonsense. Taught me to stay sharp. I sipped my ramen, trying to shake the unease. It's just a new place, Nora, I told myself. Nothing to sweat. I grabbed my sketchbook, flipping through ideas for my next project. Art's my lifeline, keeps me sane on the road. But my pencil stalled, my eyes darting to the windows. The candle's glow made the curtains look flimsy, like anyone outside could see right through. I blew it out, switching to my battery lamp. Better safe than sorry. I thought about my brother, Owen, 33, a mechanic back in Portland. He hates my lifestyle, calls it asking for trouble. I'd call him tomorrow, prove I was fine. For now, I just needed sleep. The spot I'd chosen was near an old dock, half collapsed and overgrown. It screamed abandoned, which is why I liked it. No nosy cops or campers to bother me. But something about the dock's silhouette bugged me, like it was too still, too dark. I told myself it was artist brain, seeing shapes where there weren't any. I'd parked in worse places, like that sketchy lot in Arizona where coyotes howled all night. You get used to the jitters. Or so I thought. I climbed into bed, the mattress creaking under me. Wander's noises are familiar. Every squeak, every rattle. They're home. But as I pulled the blanket up, a new sound cut through, a low, uneven thump, like something dragging across gravel. I froze, breath stuck in my throat. It stopped, then came again, closer. My heart kicked up, but I stayed still, listening. Probably just debris, I reasoned. Erie's windy, right? I gripped my multi-tool under the pillow, a gift from Owen. It's no machete, but it's something. I tried to relax, picturing Clara's dumb lake monster joke to calm my nerves. The thumping faded, and I let out a shaky laugh. See, Nora? Nothing. I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come. But the air felt wrong, thicker, like it was pressing against the van. I told myself I was tired, that the road makes you jumpy. I'd been driving too long, that's all. Still, I kept one hand on the multi-tool, just in case. Sleep was creeping in when another sound jolted me awake. A sharp, metallic clink, right against Wander's side. Not loud, but precise, like someone tapped the van with a tool. My eyes snapped open, pulse racing. I lay still, waiting for it to repeat. Nothing, just silence, heavy and disturbing. I wanted to check the windows, but my body wouldn't move. It's just a branch, I lied to myself. But I knew it wasn't. I sat up, clutching the multi-tool, and stared at the curtains. The bay was out there, vast and black, hiding whatever made that noise. I didn't know what was coming, but the horror of it was already sinking in, cold and real. Wander didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a target. I wanted to check outside, but fear glued me to the bed. Was it a person? An animal? My mind spun, replaying every horror story I'd ever heard. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. Come on, Nora, you've handled weird nights before, like that time in Colorado when a storm shook the van like a toy. This was different, though, and I knew it. I slid off the bed, keeping low, and grabbed my flashlight. Its beam jittered across Wander's interior, catching the glint of my stove, my sketchbook, normal stuff. But normal didn't cut it tonight. That sour smell from the bay was stronger, seeping through the cracks, making my throat tight. I checked my phone, no signal, not even one bar. That wasn't right. I texted Clara earlier from this spot. My gut twisted. Was something messing with the signal? I shook off the thought, but it lingered, disturbing and heavy. I crept to the driver's seat, peering through a gap in the curtain. The dock was still there, a black skeleton against the bay's shimmer. Nothing moved, but I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. I thought about starting the van and bolting, but I'd driven 8 hours today, and my lids were heavy. Fatigue clouds your head. I'd learned that after a near miss with a deer in Idaho. Leaving now risked a wreck. Still, staying felt worse, like I was daring whatever was out there to come closer. I checked the locks, my hands shaky. All secure, but it didn't help. Wander's walls felt thin, like paper against whatever made that clink. I thought about Owen, how he'd say I was reckless for parking here. He'd bought me a tire iron once, for protection, but it was buried under gear in the back. Dumb move, Nora. I kept the multi-tool close instead, its blade locked open. It wasn't much, but it beat nothing. I told myself I was overreacting, but my body wasn't buying it. Every hair stood on end. Then I heard it again, a faint scrape, slow and deliberate, along the van's rear. My breath hitched. It wasn't loud, but it was intentional, like someone dragging a key across the paint. I froze, flashlight off, praying I'd imagined it. The scrape stopped, then started again, circling to the side. My heart slammed so hard I thought it'd give me away. I wanted to yell, scare them off, but that could backfire. Like when I honked at a creepy guy in a rest stop and he threw a bottle at the van. Quiet was safer for now. I fumbled for my phone again, desperate for a signal. Still nothing. I typed a text to Clara anyway. Something's weird, call me, knowing it wouldn't send. It was a lifeline, even if it was fake. I thought about her, snapping photos in Portland, oblivious to this mess. The scrape came again, closer to the door now. My mind raced. Should I check the security camera? I'd rigged a cheap one outside after that Nevada scare. But what if I saw something I couldn't unsee? I hesitated, fear winning. I crawled to the back, where the camera's monitor was stashed. The screen was fuzzy, but it worked. The feed showed the dock, the bay, empty gravel. Then, movement. A shadow, quick and low, darted past the lens. My stomach dropped. I replayed it, but it was gone, like it knew I was watching. Glitch? Animal? I didn't believe either. The air felt thicker, the smell worse, like rock crawling inside. I gripped the multi-tool tighter, knowing I'd screwed up picking this spot. I sat there, debating my next move. Start the van? Stay put? Both felt wrong. I thought about Clara's lake monster joke. Stupid, but it grounded me for a second. Then another sound hit. Different. A soft thud, like something dropped nearby. Not on the van, but close, maybe by the dock. My pulse spiked. I pictured someone out there, tossing rocks, baiting me. I'd made a mistake staying here, and now it was catching up. The thud came again, heavier, followed by a low murmur, too faint to catch words. My blood ran cold. That wasn't wind or waves. It was a voice, human but wrong, like it didn't belong here. It was coming from the trees, maybe 20 feet away. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Wander was locked, but it felt like a trap now, and I was the bait. Something was out there, and it wasn't just passing through. This wasn't some random creep messing around. Something was horribly wrong, and the horror of it sank into my bones, cold and real. I slid to the floor, keeping low, my breath shallow. The murmurs grew clearer, not words, but a rhythmic hum, like a chant you'd hear in a nightmare. It came from all sides, circling the van. My skin crawled. I thought about Owen, how he'd tell me to get out now, but there was nowhere to go. I checked the camera again, hands shaking. The feed flickered, then showed them. Shapes, human but off, moving jerkily near the dock. Too tall, too thin, like shadows stretched wrong. They vanished when I blinked, but I knew what I'd seen. My mind screamed run, but my body wouldn't move. The van was locked, but those voices felt like they could peel the metal apart. I gripped the multi-tool tighter, its blade catching the dim glow of my battery lamp. I'd laughed at Clara's lake monster joke, but this was worse. Real, human, disturbing. I pictured her now, safe in Portland, while I was stuck here, trapped by whatever these things were. The hum shifted, closer, right outside the back door. I bit my lip to keep from gasping. A new sound cut through, a sharp rap on the van's side, like a fist testing the wall. My heart slammed against my ribs. Another rap, then a third, each one deliberate, moving toward the door. I crawled to the driver's seat, keeping my head down. The keys were in my pocket, but starting the van now felt like suicide. What if they were waiting for that? I'd made that mistake once, revving the engine in a sketchy lot in Texas, and drew a crowd of drunks. This was no drunk. The camera feed was dead now, just static. I cursed under my breath, another lifeline gone. The rap stopped, but the hum didn't, vibrating through Wander's frame. I thought about the mural I'd painted, kids playing by the lake, so bright and alive. It felt like a lie now. Erie wasn't safe. It was a trap, and I'd parked right in it. Something heavy dragged across the gravel outside, slow and purposeful, like they were marking territory. My mouth went dry. I fumbled for the tire iron, finally digging it out from under a pile of gear. It was cold, solid, better than the multi-tool. But even that felt useless against whatever was out there. The hum spiked, voices overlapping, and I caught a word, my name. Nora, clear as day, hissed through the dark. My blood froze. How did they know? I hadn't told anyone here, not even the community center folks. The horror hit harder. This wasn't random. I pressed myself against the wall, tire iron raised. The van rocked slightly, like someone leaned into it. Not hard, just enough to make me flinch. I pictured those shapes from the camera, their wrongness, and my stomach twisted. I wanted to scream, to wake up from this, but it was real. The dragging sound came again, circling now, and the voices grew louder, chanting my name in a sick rhythm. I thought of Owen, Clara, anyone who could help, but I was alone. Then came a thud, heavy, right on the roof. The van groaned under the weight. My breath stopped. Something was up there, not just leaning, moving, scraping across the metal. I gripped the tire iron so tight my knuckles ached. Another thud, then a laugh, low and guttural, like it knew I was scared. I'd never felt fear like this, not even when I got stuck in a blizzard in Utah. This was targeted, personal, and wrong. The rocking stopped, but the voices didn't. They were everywhere, above, around, inside my head. I slid to the floor, tire iron shaking in my hands. Wander wasn't home anymore. It was a cage, and I was cornered. The air was thick, the smell unbearable, and my name kept echoing in that awful chant. Something was coming. and I didn't know how much longer I could hold out. I gripped the tire iron, my hands slick with sweat, and scrambled to the driver's seat. No more waiting. I had to get out. I jammed the keys in, the engine coughing to life. Headlights flared, catching glimpses of shapes scattering beyond the dock. Too fast, too wrong. I floored it, gravel spitting, horror driving me as much as the van, praying I'd break free before they closed in. Wander lurched onto the road, tires screaming as I swerved toward Erie's lights. The chance faded, but my pulse didn't slow. I checked the mirrors, nothing but black. Were they gone? My mind flashed to a night in Oregon, when I'd outrun a creep tailing me in a truck. This was worse, like the dark itself was chasing me. The tire iron lay in my lap, useless against whatever those things were. My phone was still dead, no signal to call Owen or Clara. I was alone, flying through empty streets, every shadow a threat waiting to pounce. Streetlights flickered, casting long, jagged shapes across the road. I pushed 70 in a 40 zone, risking a crash, but not caring. I needed people, safety, anything human. I'd made a dumb move once, speeding through a Montana storm and nearly hydroplaning. This was life or death, though, and stopping wasn't an option. The sour smell clung to the van, like it had burrowed inside. I cracked a window, desperate for clean air, but it didn't help. Something thudded in the back, gear shifting, or worse. I didn't look, just kept driving, heart hammering. A neon sign glowed ahead, a 24-hour diner, its lot half full. I swerved in, brakes squealing, and parked under a floodlight. My hands shook as I scanned the mirrors. No shapes, no chance, just cars and a waitress moving inside. I wanted to run in, beg for help, but my legs wouldn't move. What would I say? Weird people know my name. I'd sound unhinged, like when I tried explaining a creepy vibe to a cop in Nevada and got a smirk. This was real, though, and terrifying. I locked the doors, clutching the tire iron. The diner's normalcy felt like a trick, too bright against the horror I'd fled. I checked the back. My sketchbook had fallen, that's all. Still, I didn't relax. Those voices, those shapes, they knew me. How? I hadn't told anyone in Erie my name, not even the mural client. My stomach knotted, replaying their chant. I thought of Owen, how he'd lose it if he knew. I needed to call him, but the phone was a brick. I scanned the lot again, every parked car a potential ambush. A guy walked out of the diner, lighting a cigarette, and I flinched, thinking he was one of them. Just a dude, Nora, chill. But my nerves were shot, every sound a threat. I remembered Clara's dumb lake monster joke. God, I wished it was that simple. The van felt exposed, even under the light. I wanted to keep driving, find a motel, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Had I really escaped, or was this a pause? Then I heard it, a faint hum, barely audible, drifting from the lot's edge. My blood froze. No way. I squinted into the dark, past the diner's glow. Nothing moved, but that sound was theirs, I knew it. My hands fumbled with the keys, ready to bolt again. The guy with the cigarette glanced over, probably wondering why I looked panicked. I didn't care. I'd made it this far, but the horror wasn't gone. It was waiting, patient, like it knew I couldn't run forever. I started the van, easing toward the exit, eyes locked on the shadows. The hum grew louder, unmistakable now, coming from the trees across the road. I thought about flooring it, but something caught my eye, a glint, like eyes reflecting in the dark. My breath caught. They were here, watching, letting me think I was safe. I gripped the tire iron, my knuckles white. I had to move, but every choice felt like a trap, and I was running out of road. I pulled onto the highway, diner shrinking behind me. The hum faded, but I didn't trust it. My heart was a drum, my eyes darting to every shadow. I was alive, for now, but the fear clung to me, heavy and real. Those things weren't done, they'd marked me, and Erie streets felt like their playground. I didn't know where I was going, just away, praying distance could save me. I spotted a rest area sign and veered off, hoping for lights, maybe a trucker or two. Bad call, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I'd done this before, pulled into a sketchy spot in Arizona, and regretted it when a guy started circling my van. This felt worse, like I was handing myself over. The rest area was empty. No trucks, no cars, just a flickering bulb over a picnic table. I parked, leaving the engine running, and locked the doors. My phone was still dead, no way to call Clara or Owen. I was cut off, and it felt deliberate. I scanned the lot. the trees beyond it swallowing the light. My hands shook as I checked the gas, quarter tank, maybe less. Enough to get to a city, but what if they followed? I thought about the mural I'd painted, those happy kids, and how far that felt now. Wander was my world, but it was failing me, its walls too thin against whatever was out there. A twig snapped nearby, and I jumped, tire iron raised. Just wind, I told myself, but my heart wasn't buying it. The air smelled sour again, thick and disturbing. I cracked the window for air, a dumb move I realized too late. A low chuckle came from the dark, close, like it was right outside. My skin went cold. I slammed the window shut, cursing myself. Blood draws predators. Owen's words from a camping trip years ago. Fear was blood now, and I was bleeding it. The chuckle came again, joined by a scrape along the van's side. I froze, tire iron useless in my shaking hands. They'd tracked me, waited for me to screw up, and I delivered. I slid to the back, checking the locks, my breath loud in the quiet. The van rocked, just a little, like someone tested it. My mind screamed at me to drive, but I hesitated, another mistake. The engine was still on, but the gauge was dipping lower. I'd ignored it, thinking I could outrun this. Like that time, I pushed Wander through a desert with a leaky radiator, cocky and dumb. The rocking grew harder, and a voice hissed my name, clear and sharp, right through the metal. My stomach dropped. I scrambled to the driver's seat, ready to bolt. The key turned, but the engine sputtered, choking out. No. I tried again, nothing. The battery light blinked, mocking me. I'd left the headlights on too long, drained it in my panic. The van was dead, and so was I if I didn't move. The chuckles multiplied, circling now, and the van shook violently, like hands were everywhere, prying, pulling. I gripped the tire iron, knowing it wouldn't help against this many. I thought of Clara, her laugh, and Owen, his gruff voice, people I'd never see again. The van was my dream, freedom, art, the road, but it had led me here, to this end. A window cracked, glass spiderwebbing under a heavy blow. I screamed, swinging the tire iron at nothing, my voice raw. The voices laughed louder, my name a taunt in their throats. I'd chosen this spot, this life, and it was my fault. The horror wasn't just them. It was me, my choices, my arrogance. The van tipped, one side lifting, then slamming back down. I fell, the tire iron skidding away. My hand scrabbled for it, finding only glass shards. The door groaned, metal bending under force. I yelled for help, knowing it was useless. The air was thick, the smell choking, and my name rang out, over and over, until it was all I heard. Wonder wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs, and they were coming in. I curled up, hands over my head, as the door buckled. The last thing I felt was the cold rush of air. The last thing I heard was my name. And then, nothing. The road had claimed me, just like Owen always feared, and there was no way back. I'm Caleb Morrow, 34 years old, and I hail from Denver, Colorado, though I haven't seen it in a while. My rig, a patched-up Dodge Sprinter I call Rogue, is my world, cobbled together with a bed, a propane stove, and a desk for my freelance coding gigs. I'd come to Erie chasing a contract with a local tech startup, but the job wrapped early, leaving me a night to kill. The rail yard was quiet, tucked behind rusted tracks and crumbling warehouses, perfect for stealth parking. I just wanted to crash, maybe code a bit, and move on by dawn. I cut the engine, the silence hitting hard. Rogue's interior was cozy, lit by a string of battery-powered LEDs. I locked the doors, a reflex from too many sketchy nights on the road. Erie's air had a sharp, metallic tang, like old pennies, probably from the decaying steel around me. I shrugged it off, firing up my laptop to tweak some code. The lot was empty, just me and the ghosts of old trains. I liked it that way. Vanlife's all about freedom, not crowds. Still, something about this place felt heavier than usual, like the dark was watching. I heated some chili on the stove, the smell filling Rogue's tight space. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Jess, a 30-year-old bartender back in Denver. Erie's got weird vibes, dude. Be careful. I chuckled. She's always paranoid, probably from too many late shifts. I texted back, just chilling, no ghosts yet. But her words stuck, nagging me as I ate. I thought about my cousin Theo, 36, A trucker who'd warned me about bad stretches in places like this. He'd laugh if he saw me now, parked in a creepy lot like some horror movie extra. Rogue's setup is practical: shelves for gear, a cooler, a mattress I crash on. I've got blackout curtains for privacy, a must after a close call in Texas when some kids tried peering in. Tonight, I checked them twice, making sure no light leaked out. The rail yard was dead. No cars, no people, just the faint hum of distant traffic. I tried to focus on my code, but my eyes kept drifting to the windows. It's stupid, I told myself, just road jitters. You get used to them after a while. Or so I thought. I leaned back, sipping water, and glanced at a photo taped to the wall. Me and Jess at a Denver dive bar, grinning like idiots. It grounded me, reminded me I wasn't totally alone. But the quiet was getting to me, thick and unsettling. I turned on some lo-fi tunes, low enough not to draw attention. Vanlife's freedom comes with quirks, like random noises or weird vibes. I'd parked in worse spots, like a desert lot in Nevada where coyotes screamed all night. This was fine, right? The lot I'd picked was near a derelict warehouse, its broken windows like empty eyes. It was perfect for staying invisible. No security, no nosy locals. But the longer I sat, the more it bugged me. The shadows felt too deep, the air too still. I told myself it was just my brain, tired from a long drive. I'd been on the road 12 hours, and exhaustion plays tricks. Still, I grabbed my pocket knife, sliding it under my pillow. Better safe than sorry, Caleb. I climbed into bed, Rogue's familiar creaks easing me a bit. I thought about calling Theo, but it was late, and he'd just rag on me for being soft. The music helped, a soft beat against the silence. I closed my eyes, ready to drift off. Then it came, a faint tap, sharp and clear, on the van's rear door. My eyes snapped open, heart kicking up. I held my breath, waiting. Nothing. Probably a twig. I lied to myself, but my hand was already on the knife. The tap didn't repeat, but the air felt wrong, heavier, like it was pressing in. I sat up, scanning the curtains, their edges glowing faintly from a distant streetlight. I told myself it was nothing, just the rail yard's creepy vibe messing with me. I'd dealt with worse, like that time in Utah when a storm rattled Rogue so hard I thought it'd flip. But this was different, a nagging, disturbing pull in my gut that wouldn't quit. I lay back down, knife close, trying to shake the unease. The music looped, but it couldn't drown out the quiet, or the feeling that something was out there, waiting. Rogue was my home, my escape, but tonight, it felt like a box I couldn't trust. I didn't know what was coming, but the night was young, and Erie wasn't done with me yet. That metallic tang in the air was stronger now, stinging my nose like rusted iron. I wanted to check outside, but my gut said stay put. I'd been spooked before, like when I heard weird howls in New Mexico, and it was just wind. But this tap wasn't wind. It was too sharp, too human. The horror of it lingered, making my skin prickle. I killed the music, the quiet hitting like a fist. I slid off the bed, grabbing my flashlight, keeping the beam low. Rogue's interior looked normal. Laptop, chili pot, my messy gear pile. But normal didn't mean safe. I checked my phone, no bars. That was weird. I'd had signal earlier when I texted Jess. My stomach nodded. Was something jamming it? I shook off the thought, but it stuck, disturbing and heavy. I needed to chill, but every nerve was screaming stay alert. I crept to the curtains, peeling one back an inch. The rail yard was a sea of shadows, the warehouse looming like a dead giant. Nothing moved, but I felt watched, like eyes were locked on Rogue. Starting the van and bolting was tempting, but I'd driven too long today. I'd nearly nodded off in Ohio once, almost clipped a guardrail. Driving now was asking for trouble. Still, staying here, with that tap echoing in my head, felt like a gamble I wasn't sure I'd win. I double-checked the locks, my hands unsteady. All good, but it didn't ease me. Rogue's walls seemed flimsy, like they couldn't stop whatever was out there. I thought about Theo, how he'd call me an idiot for parking here. He'd given me a stun gun once, for psychos, but it was dead, buried in a drawer. Sloppy, Caleb. The knife would have to do. I kept it open, blade catching the flashlight's glow. I told myself it was probably nothing, but my body wasn't buying it. Then it came again, a slow, scraping sound, like metal dragging across Rogue's side. My breath caught. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate, circling toward the back. I froze, flashlight off, praying it'd stop. It didn't. The scrape kept going, steady, like someone was toying with me. I wanted to shout, scare them off, but that could backfire. I'd done it once in a sketchy lot in Kansas, yelled at shadows, and drew a drunk who smashed my mirror. Silence was smarter, for now. I slid to the floor, heart hammering, and thought about Jess. She'd be pouring shots in Denver, clueless about this mess. I tried texting her, something's off, call me, but it wouldn't send. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Erie wasn't that remote, was it? The scrape stopped, then started again, closer to the door. My mind raced. Check the camera? I'd rigged a cheap one outside after a scare in Idaho, but seeing something might make it worse. I hesitated, fear clawing at me. I grabbed the camera monitor, hands shaking as I powered it on. The feed was grainy, showing the rail yard's edge, the warehouse's broken windows. Then, a flicker, something moving fast across the frame. My gut dropped. I replayed it, but it was gone, like it knew I was watching. Animal? Glitch? Neither felt right. The air got heavier, that metallic smell sharper, like blood now. I gripped the knife, knowing I'd picked the wrong spot tonight. I sat back, debating my options. Drive? Hide? Both sucked. I thought about Theo's stories, truckers vanishing on lonely routes. Was this how it started? The scraping stopped, but a new sound replaced it. A low thump, like something heavy dropped nearby, maybe by the tracks. My pulse spiked. I pictured someone out there, tossing junk to mess with me. I'd screwed up staying here, and now it was biting me. The thump came again, closer, followed by a faint mutter, too soft to catch. My blood ran cold. That wasn't random. It was a voice, human, out in the dark. It came from the warehouse side, maybe 30 feet away. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Rogue was locked, but it felt like a trap now, and I was caught. Something was out there, and it wasn't just passing by, it was hunting. I killed the flashlight, plunging Rogue into black, my heart slamming so loud I swore they'd hear it. This wasn't a prank. Something was dead wrong, and the horror of it hit me like a brick, raw and unrelenting. I crouched low, barely breathing, the voices growing sharper, not words, but a guttural hum, weaving around the van like a noose tightening. My phone was still dead, no signal to call Jess or Theo. I thought about them, safe far away, while I was here, cornered in a tin box. I grabbed the camera monitor again, praying it'd show nothing. The feed flickered, then caught them. Figures, human-shaped but off, lurching near the warehouse. Too lean, too fast, gone when I blinked. My stomach twisted, the image burned into my head, disturbing as hell. The hum spiked, closer, right outside Rogue's back door. My skin prickled, every hair standing up. I gripped the knife tighter, its blade useless against whatever this was. I pictured Jess, joking about ghosts, but these weren't spirits. They were real, flesh and bone, and that made it worse. The van felt smaller, walls closing in. I'd been spooked before, like when I heard screams in Arizona that turned out to be foxes. This wasn't animals. This was targeted, and I was the target, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. A sharp bang hit the side of the van, metal ringing like a gunshot. I flinched, biting back a yell. Another bang, then a third, slow and deliberate, moving toward the door. My heart was a jackhammer. I slid to the driver's seat, keeping low, keys in my pocket. Starting Rogue now might draw them closer, but staying still felt like death. I'd made a dumb move once, idling in a bad spot in Missouri and attracting a creep who tried the handle. This was worse. More of them, and they weren't just curious. The camera was dark now, lens dead or smashed. I cursed, my lifeline gone. The bang stopped, but the hum didn't, vibrating through the floor like they were pressing against Rogue. I thought about Theo's stories, truck stops where drivers vanished, no trace. Was this it? The smell was unbearable, like rot and rust mixed, clogging my throat. Something scraped the roof, slow and heavy, like a blade carving metal. My mouth went dry, fear choking me. I fumbled for the stun gun, finally finding it in the drawer. Dead battery, of course, my fault for not checking. The knife was all I had, and it felt like a joke. The hum turned into a chant, low and rhythmic, and I caught something. My name, hissed clear as day. Caleb. My blood froze. No one here knew me, not the startup, not even the gas station clerk I'd seen earlier. The horror sank deeper. This wasn't random, and they weren't strangers. The van rocked, a hard jolt, like someone slammed into it. I gripped the seat, knife raised, expecting the door to cave in. I wanted to scream, to fight, but what could I do against this? The chant grew louder, my name looping in their voices, mocking me. I pictured those figures, their wrongness, and my gut screamed run. But there was nowhere to go. Rogue was surrounded, the rail yard their turf. Another jolt, harder, and a laugh cut through, sharp and cruel, like they knew I was breaking. I slid to the floor, knife trembling, sweat stinging my eyes. The rocking stopped, but the chant didn't, wrapping Rogue like a shroud. Something heavy thudded on the roof, not moving, just sitting there. My breath was ragged, the air too thick to swallow. I thought of Jess, Theo, anyone who'd care if I didn't make it. The horror wasn't just out there, it was in me, my choices, parking here like a fool thinking I was untouchable. The thud shifted, scraping across the roof, slow and deliberate, like it was looking for a way in. The voices were everywhere, my name a taunt, and Rogue groaned under the weight. I was trapped, no signal, no help, no plan. The rail yard was theirs, and I'd walked right into it, blind and cocky, not ready for what was coming next. Pavement screamed under the tires as I hit the street, rail yard shrinking in the mirrors. The chant faded, but my heart was a hammer, pounding out fear. I checked for tails, nothing, just black. I'd outrun trouble before, like a sketchy tailgater in Wyoming. But this was different, like the night itself was hunting me. The metallic smell clung, sour and thick, like blood baked into Rogue's frame. My phone was still dead, no way to call Jess or Theo. I was alone, weaving through Erie's empty roads, every shadow a threat ready to launch. Streetlights blinked erratically, casting jagged shapes that messed with my head. I pushed 65 in a 30 zone, reckless but desperate. I needed lights, people, anything normal. I'd been stupid once, speeding through fog in Nebraska and nearly eating a ditch. This was worse, life or death, no second chances. A sign flashed, gas station, 2 miles. I aimed for it, gripping the wheel till my knuckles ached. Something rattled in the back, gear or worse, but I didn't look. Just drive, Caleb, don't stop. The station's neon glow hit like a lifeline, pumps lit, a clerk inside scrolling his phone. I skidded in, parking under the brightest light, breath ragged. Mirrors showed nothing, no shapes, no eyes. I wanted to bolt inside, spill everything, but what did I say? Creepy people know my name. I tried that in Arizona once, rambled to a cop about a weird vibe, got a shrug. This was real, though raw and disturbing, and I wasn't safe yet, not by a long shot. I locked the doors, knife in my lap, scanning the lot. The clerk didn't look up, oblivious to my panic. Rogue felt too small, like a spotlight was on me. I thought of Theo, his trucker tales of drivers disappearing. Was this how it started? The smell was still there, heavy, making my throat burn. I checked the back. Laptop had slid, that's all. Still, I didn't relax. Those things knew me, my name, and that wasn't random. My hands shook, itching to move again. A truck pulled in, its rumble snapping me alert. Just a guy fueling up, normal, but I flinched anyway. Every noise was them now, every shadow their shape. I pictured Jess, safe in Denver, and wished I'd listened to her warning. The gas station was a bubble, fragile, and I knew it wouldn't hold. I'd escaped the rail yard, but the horror wasn't gone. It was patient, waiting for me to slip. I gripped the knife tighter, debating my next move, stay or run. Then I heard it, a low hum, faint, creeping from the lot's edge. My blood turned to ice. No way, not here. I squinted past the pumps, into the dark beyond. Nothing moved, but that sound was theirs, unmistakable, slinking closer. The trucker didn't notice, but I did. I fumbled the keys, ready to bolt. The clerk glanced up, probably thinking I was nuts. I didn't care. I'd heard it, and it meant they weren't done with me. I started Rogue, easing toward the exit, eyes locked on the shadows. The hum grew, joined by a soft scrape, like nails on pavement, trailing me. My heart was in my throat. I'd thought I'd lost them, but they were here, watching, letting me think I'd won. I hit the road, station fading behind, the knife digging into my palm. I was running again, but it felt futile, like Erie itself was their cage, and I was still inside. The highway opened up, dark and endless, but I didn't slow. The hum was gone, but I didn't trust it. My hands were numb, my chest tight with fear. I'd escaped for now, but those eyes, that chant, They were burned into me, a mark I couldn't shake. I didn't know where I was going, just away, praying I could outrun what was coming, knowing deep down I probably couldn't. I saw a dirt road branching off, leading into thick woods. Dumb move, but the highway felt too open, like I was begging to be seen. I'd taken risks before, like camping off-grid in Montana and dodging a bear. This was worse, suicidal, maybe, but I turned anyway, road bouncing over ruts. Branches clawed the roof, sounding too much like their scrapes. My heart was a drum, every shadow a figure waiting to strike. I was running blind, and I knew it, but stopping wasn't an option. The road dead-ended at a clearing, just mud and stumps, no way out. I cursed, slamming the wheel. Rookie mistake, Caleb. The engine idled, gas needle redlining. I locked the doors, knife raised, scanning the trees. Silence, but it was heavy, like a trap snapping shut. I thought of Jess, her laugh, and Theo, his gruff warnings. I'd never call them now, never prove I was okay. Rogue was my freedom, my life. But here, it was a coffin, and I'd driven straight into it. I cracked a window, needing air, big mistake. A low laugh hit, sharp and close, right outside. My skin went cold. I slammed it shut, but too late. The laugh spread, more voices, circling the clearing. My hands shook, knife slipping in my sweat. I'd learned from Theo, don't bait predators, don't show fear. But I was bleeding fear now, and they smelled it. The van rocked, a hard jolt, like someone tested its weight. I gripped the seat, knowing I'd screwed up bad. The gas light blinked, engine stuttering. I'd ignored it, thinking I could push through. Like that time I drove Rogue on a flat in Utah, cocky and dumb, limping to a shop. This was final. No shop, no fix. The rocking grew, Rogue groaning, and my name came again, hissed through the dark, Caleb, over and over. My stomach dropped. They weren't just here. They owned this place, and I'd handed myself over, thinking I could hide. I tried the engine. Nothing, just a click. Dead. My fault. Leaving the lights on back at the station, draining it in panic. The laughs were louder, a chorus now, and the van shook harder, like hands were everywhere, prying. I swung the knife at air, yelling, raw and desperate, hoping to scare them. It didn't. A window cracked, glass splintering, and cold air rushed in. I thought of Jess, Theo, my life before this road, and knew I'd never see it again. The door buckled, metal screaming under force. I scrambled back, knife raised, tripping over gear. My name was a chant, deafening, filling Rogue with their hate. I'd chosen this spot, this life, thinking I was free, untouchable. The horror was my arrogance, my blindness, leading me here. The van tipped, one side lifting, and I fell, knife gone, hands clawing at nothing. They were on me, their laughs a blade in my chest. I curled up, screaming for help no one would hear. The door gave, ripping open, and shadows poured in. Not human, not anymore. My name was the last thing I heard. Their voices swallowing it, swallowing me. Rogue was theirs now, my home, my grave, and the road had won, just like Theo always feared it would. The clearing was quiet after. No trace of Rogue, no sign of me. Erie's dark had taken what it wanted, and the rail yard, the woods, the night. They kept their secrets, waiting for the next fool to park where they shouldn't. I'm Harper Quinn, 27 years old, and I call Austin, Texas, home when I'm not roaming. My van, a retrofitted Chevy I dubbed Vagabond, is my sanctuary, string lights, a bunk, a tiny kitchen I've cooked 100 meals in. I'd landed in Erie for a pop-up art fair, selling my leatherwork to hipsters and locals. The fair was done, but I wasn't ready to bounce. This lot, hidden by overgrown weeds and rusted fences, looked good for a quiet night. Just me, Vagabond, and a plan to sketch some new designs before sunrise. I locked the doors, the click loud in the stillness. Erie's air was damp, heavy with a burnt rubber stink, probably from the mill's rotting corpse. I lit a lantern, its glow warming Vagabond's cozy insides. My phone pinged, a text from my friend Riley, a 29-year-old tattoo artist back in Austin. Erie sounds sketchy, Harp. Don't sleep in no haunted lots. I laughed, texting back. No ghosts, just vibes. Riley's always got my back, but she worries too much. Still, her words hung there, nagging me as I settled in. I heated some tea, the kettle's whistle cutting the quiet. Vagabond's my haven, every inch mine, from the patched curtains to the shelf of thrifted books. But tonight, the mill's shadow felt too close, like it was leaning over me. I checked the windows, making sure no light slipped out. Last summer, some creep in Oklahoma peeked through my curtains, taught me to stay low-key. I sipped my tea, trying to shake the unease. It's just a new spot, Harper, I told myself. Nothing weird here. My sketch pad was open, half-finished bracelets sketched in pencil. Art's my lifeline, keeps me grounded on the road. But my focus kept slipping, eyes darting to the curtains. The lantern flickered, probably low battery, but it made the shadows twitch. I swapped it for a flashlight, muttering about my own jumpiness. I thought about my sister, Mara, 31, a barista in Austin. She hates my Vanlife gig, calls it running from life. I'd call her tomorrow, send a goofy selfie to shut her up. The lot was dead. No cars, no voices, just the faint drip of rain on Vagabond's roof. I liked it. Usually, solitude's my jam. But something about this place bugged me, like the air was too thick, too still. I'd parked in rough spots before, like a desert pullout in Arizona where snakes rattled all night. You get used to the creeps. Or so I thought. The mill loomed outside, its smokestacks like fingers clawing the sky, and I couldn't shake a bad feeling. I climbed into my bunk, Vagabond's familiar squeaks easing me a bit. I thought about Riley, inking clients in Austin, probably blasting punk rock. Her warning about Erie felt silly now, but I kept my multi-tool under the pillow, a gift from Mara. It's no sword, but it's something. The rain picked up, a steady patter, lulling me toward sleep. I told myself the mill was just old, empty, nothing to sweat. I'd be gone by morning, no big deal. Sleep was creeping in when a sound jolted me, a low, uneven thump, like something bumped Vagabond's rear. My eyes snapped open, heart kicking up. I lay still, listening. Rain, just rain, I hoped. But it came again, heavier, near the door. My hand slid to the multi-tool, gripped tight. Probably a branch. I lied to myself, but my gut wasn't buying it. The night felt alive, watching, and I wasn't so sure I was alone anymore. The thump didn't repeat, but the air shifted, heavier, like something was holding its breath. I sat up, flashlight in one hand, multi-tool in the other. The curtains were shut tight, but I swore I felt eyes out there, boring through. I told myself I was tired, that the road makes you paranoid. I'd driven 10 hours, and my brain was playing tricks. Still, I couldn't shake the disturbing pull in my chest, like trouble was already here. I stayed still, ears straining, the rain a soft drone. Vagabond was my safe place, my freedom, but tonight, it felt too small, too fragile. The mill was out there, silent and wrong, and Erie's dark seemed to hum with something I couldn't name. I didn't know what was coming, but it was close, and I wasn't ready. I slid to the floor, grabbing my flashlight, keeping the beam dim. Vagabond's insides looked fine, sketchpad, tea mug, my messy blanket pile. But fine wasn't safe. I checked my phone. No signal, not even a flicker. That was wrong. I'd texted Riley from here earlier. My gut twisted. Was something blocking it? I pushed the thought away, but it lingered, heavy and disturbing. I told myself to breathe, but every shadow in the van felt like it was moving. I crept to the curtains, heart pounding, and nudged one aside. The mill was a black shape against the rain, its windows like dead eyes. Nothing stirred, but I felt watched, like something was sizing up Vagabond. I could start the van, get out now, but I'd driven too long today. I'd nearly dozed off in Ohio once, almost hit a median. Leaving now was risky, but staying, after that thump, felt like rolling dice with my life. I wasn't sure I liked the odds. I checked the locks, fingers fumbling, all secure. Still, Vagabond's walls seemed thin, like they couldn't hold back whatever was out there. I thought of Mara, how she'd say I was nuts for parking here. She'd given me a pepper spray canister for weirdos, but it was stuffed in a bag somewhere. Sloppy Harper. The multi-tool was my only defense, its blade flipped out. I tried to laugh it off, probably just debris, right? But my body was tense, ready for trouble. Then it hit again, a slow, grinding scrape, like something dragged across Vagabond's side. My breath stopped. It wasn't loud, but it was intentional, moving toward the back door. I froze, flashlight off, praying it'd pass. It didn't. The scrape circled, steady, like someone was testing me. I wanted to yell, scare it off, but that could go wrong. I'd done it once in a bad lot in Florida, shouted at shadows, and got a rock thrown at my window. Quiet was better for now. I grabbed my phone again, desperate for a bar. Nothing. I typed a text to Riley. Weird noise, call me, knowing it was pointless. It felt like a tether, even if it didn't work. I pictured her in Austin, sketching tattoos, oblivious. The scrape came back, closer, near the handle now. My mind screamed, check the camera? I'd rigged a cheap one outside after a scare in Colorado. But what if I saw something real? I hesitated, fear locking me up tight. I crawled to the camera monitor, hands shaky, and flicked it on. The feed was blurry, rain-streaked, showing the mill's edge, the lot's weeds. Then, movement, a shape darting past, low and fast. My stomach dropped. I replayed it, but it was gone, like it knew I was looking. Animal, trick of the light. I didn't buy either. The air was thick, the stink worse, like decay crawling inside. I gripped the multi-tool, knowing I'd picked a bad spot. I sat there, mind racing. Drive? Stay? Both felt like traps. I thought of Riley's warning about Erie, wishing I'd listened. Another sound came, a soft thud, not on the van, but close, maybe by the fence. My pulse spiked. I pictured someone out there, tossing junk to mess with me. I'd screwed up parking here, thinking I was slick, invisible. Now it was catching up, and I wasn't sure I could outsmart it. The thud hit again, heavier, followed by a low mumble, too faint for words. My blood ran cold. That was human, no question, coming from the mill's shadow, maybe 20 feet away. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Vagabond was locked, but it felt like a cage now, and I was the prey. Something was out there, and it wasn't just wandering. It was here for me, and it was only getting started. I slid lower, barely breathing, the hum growing into a chant, not words, just a sick rhythm circling the van. My phone was dead, no signal, no way to reach Riley or Mara. I pictured them, safe in Austin, while I was trapped here, alone with whatever these things were. I grabbed the camera monitor, hands trembling, desperate for answers. The feed flickered, then showed them. Shapes, human but broken, twitching near the mill's fence. Too sharp, too wrong, gone in a flash. My gut clenched, their image seared into me, disturbing as hell. The chant tightened, right outside Vagabond's door, vibrating the walls. My skin crawled, every nerve screaming run. But where? I gripped the multi-tool, its blade a flimsy shield. I thought of Riley's warning about Erie, how I'd laughed it off. This wasn't funny, real, raw, terrifying. The van felt like a trap, its cozy setup mocking me. I'd brushed off scares before, like coyotes howling in New Mexico, but this was human, deliberate, and it knew I was here. A hard knock hit the van's side, sharp, like a hammer striking metal. I flinched, swallowing a gasp. Another knock, slower, dragging toward the back. My heart was a jackhammer. I crawled to the driver's seat, keeping low, keys in my pocket. Starting Vagabond now could draw them, but staying was worse. I'd screwed up once, idling in a bad spot in Georgia, and attracted a guy who tried my lock. This was no lone weirdo. There were more, and they were circling. The camera feed cut to static, gone, like something killed it. I bit back a curse, my lifeline severed. The knock stopped, but the chant didn't, sinking into my bones. The stink was choking, like death itself was pressing in. Something scraped the van, slow, like a blade carving paint. My mouth went dry, fear drowning me. I thought of Mara, her lectures about settling down. Was she right? This spot, this life, it was all wrong, and I was paying for it now. I fumbled for the pepper spray, finally digging it from my bag. Half empty, but better than nothing. The multi-tool stayed in my other hand, a pathetic backup. The chant shifted, and I froze. My name, clear and hissed, Harper. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't told a soul in Erie my name. Not the art fair folks, nobody. The horror hit like a wave. This wasn't chance. They knew me, wanted me, and I didn't know why. Vagabond rocked, a sudden jolt, like someone slammed against it. I gripped the seat, multi-tool raised, expecting the door to burst open. I wanted to scream, fight, anything, but I was paralyzed. The chant grew louder, my name a taunt in their throats, wrapping me tight. I saw those shapes again in my mind, their broken movements, and my stomach twisted. Another jolt, harder, and a laugh, low, cruel, like they smelled my fear. I slid to the floor, pepper spray shaking, sweat burning my eyes. The rocking stopped, but the chant kept on, relentless, weaving through the rain. Something heavy dropped on the roof, not moving, just pressing down. My breath was shallow, the air too thick to swallow. I thought of Riley, Mara, anyone who'd miss me. The horror wasn't just them. It was this place, this night, and me, thinking I could handle it alone. The weight on the roof shifted, scraping slow, like it was hunting for a way in. The voices were everywhere, my name a blade cutting deeper, and Vagabond groaned, metal straining. I was cornered, no signal, no help, and the mill's shadow felt alive, swallowing me whole. Whatever was out there wasn't stopping, and I was running out of time to fight back. The van rocked again, that sick chant, my name, cutting through the rain. Vagabond was a cage now, pinned in Erie's steel mill lot by voices that weren't right. I clutched the pepper spray, multi-tool in my other hand, and scrambled to the driver's seat. No waiting, I had to move. Keys in, engine growling, headlights slashing the dark. Shapes darted beyond the mill, jagged and humanish, eyes flashing before they vanished. I slammed the gas, Vagabond lurching forward, tires spitting mud. Horror drove me as much as the van, my only thought to get out before those things closed in. Pavement hit hard under the tires, mill fading in the mirrors. The chant softened, but my pulse was a freight train. I checked for shadows trailing me. Nothing, just wet black road. I'd outrun trouble once, some creep chasing me in Tennessee, but this was worse, like Erie itself was alive and angry. The burnt rubber stink stuck, thick as tar, clogging my throat. Phone still dead, no way to call Riley or Mara. I weaved through empty streets, every corner hiding a thread, every light flickering like it knew I was running. I pushed 60 in a 35 zone, stupid but desperate, aiming for Erie's glow. Needed people, safety, anything not this. I'd been reckless before, nearly flipped Vagabond in a Texas storm, too cocky. This was survival, no room for mistakes. A sign blinked, truck stop, 1 mile. I gunned for it, hands locked on the wheel. Something clattered in the back, my sketchpad maybe, but I didn't check. Just drive, Harper, don't look. The rain was relentless, blurring the world, making every shadow a figure waiting to strike. The truck stop's lights hit like salvation, rigs parked, a diner buzzing inside. I skidded in, aiming for a floodlight, brakes squealing. Mirrors showed nothing, no shapes, no eyes. I wanted to run in, beg for help, but my voice felt stuck. What did I say? Monsters know my name? I tried explaining a bad vibe in Utah once, got laughed off. This was real, though, raw and terrifying, and I wasn't clear yet, not even close. Doors locked. I gripped the pepper spray, scanning the lot. A driver walked by, sipping coffee, normal as hell, but I flinched, expecting those eyes. The diner's glow felt fake, too bright against the dark I'd fled. I thought of Riley's warning. Why didn't I listen? That stink was still here, like Vagabond carried it. I checked the back, just my bag, spilled open. My hands shook, itching to bolt again, but stopping here felt like daring them to find me. A rig's horn blared, snapping me alert. Just a trucker pulling out, but my nerves were shot, every sound their chant. I pictured Mara, nagging me to quit this life, and wished I'd called her. The truck stop was a bubble, fragile, and I knew it wouldn't last. Those things weren't random. They'd marked me, my name in their throats. I'd escaped the mill, but the horror was alive, waiting for me to blink, to slip. Then it came, a faint hum, low, slinking from the lot's edge. My blood froze. Not here, not now. I squinted past the rigs, into the wet dark. Nothing moved, but that hum was theirs, creeping closer. I fumbled the keys, pepper spray ready, heart exploding. A waitress glanced out, probably thinking I was weird. Didn't matter. I'd heard it, and it meant they were back, patient, hungry for me. I started Vagabond, inching toward the exit, eyes glued to the shadows. The hum grew, a soft scrape joining it, like boots dragging on asphalt. My stomach knotted. I'd thought I'd lost them, but they were here, letting me taste freedom before snapping it away. I hit the road, truck stop fading, pepper spray in my lap. I was running again, but it felt like chasing my own grave, Erie's night refusing to let go. Highway stretched ahead, rain slick and endless, but I didn't ease up. The hum was gone, but my hands were numb, chest tight with dread. Those shapes, their chant, They were part of me now, a scar I couldn't shake. I was alive, for now, but running only stretched the leash, and deep down, I knew they'd pull it tight soon enough. Vagabond rattled down the highway, rain hammering, my eyes burning from strain. Gas was low, my fault, too scared to stop earlier. Never let the tank dip, Vanlife 101, and I'd blown it, panic overriding sense. Pepper spray was in my hand, multi-tool lost in the chaos. The burnt rubber stink was worse, like death baked into the van, choking me. That hum lingered in my head, even if it was quiet now, and the horror of them knowing me. My name, gnawed deeper, a wound I couldn't close. A side road appeared, dirt and narrow, leading into woods. Worst idea ever, but the highway felt like a spotlight, screaming my location. I'd taken dumb risks before, like camping too close to a river in Oregon and waking to mud. This was suicide, but I turned, vagabond bouncing, branches scraping like their nails. My heart was a drum, every tree a hiding place for those shapes, their eyes waiting to catch me. The road ended in a muddy clearing, no way forward. I cursed, slamming the dash. Trapped, Harper, you idiot. The engine idled, gas needle red. I locked the doors, pepper spray raised, scanning the dark. Silence, but it was heavy, like a blade about to drop. I pictured Riley, sketching in Austin, and Mara, pouring coffee, lives I'd never touch again. Vagabond was my freedom, my art, but here, it was a box, and I'd locked myself inside. I opened a vent, needing air, stupid, fatal move. A laugh hit, low and sharp, right outside. My skin iced over. I slammed it shut, but the damage was done. The laugh spread, voices weaving, circling the clearing. My hands shook, pepper spray slipping in my sweat. Mara's voice rang in my head, "Don't be reckless." Too late. The van rocked, a hard jolt, like hands testing it. I was bleeding fear, and they were drinking it, closing in tight. Gaslight flashed, engine coughing. I'd ignored it, thinking I could outrun this. Like when I pushed Vagabond through a desert with bad brakes, cocky and blind. No fixing this. The laughs grew, my name hissed again. Harper, a blade in the dark. My stomach sank. They weren't just here, they owned this night, and I'd walked right into their hands, thinking I was clever. I tried the engine. Click, nothing. Battery dead, drained by my panic, leaving lights on at the truck stop. The van shook harder, metal groaning, voices everywhere, my name a chant swallowing me. I sprayed pepper at the air, useless, screaming, raw and broken. A window cracked, glass splintering, cold rain rushing in. I thought of Riley, Mara, my life before this road, gone now, my fault for choosing this. The door buckled, a scream of metal, hands prying it open. I scrambled back, tripping over my bag, pepper spray empty. My name was deafening, their laughs a storm in my skull. I'd built Vagabond, loved it, thought it'd save me. The horror was me, my choices, parking where I shouldn't, believing I was free. The van tipped, one side lifting, and I fell, hands clawing mud and glass. They were inside, shadows with eyes, not human anymore. I screamed, no one to hear, rain mixing with my tears. The last thing I felt was their weight. The last thing I heard was Harper, endless, claiming me. Vagabond was theirs, my home, my grave, and the road had eaten me whole, just like Mara always feared. The clearing stood empty after, no van, no trace, Erie's dark swallowing it all. The mill, the woods, the rain, they kept their secrets, waiting for the next soul to park in the wrong place.